on the dates agreed previously by the board at our annual meeting in June 19, 2020. The virtual meetings will be held using Zoom meeting software. All notices and documents relating to virtual meetings will be published and circulated electronically. The conduct of virtual meetings will be reflected as closely as possible the arrangements for physical meetings set out in the Combined Authority's Constitution. Voting will be dealt with by the chair, asking each voting member individually how they wish to vote rather than by a show of hands. The press and public will be able to observe meetings in real time by using a link on the meeting webpage. Decision statements and minutes will be published in the normal way. These are temporary arrangements pending the relaxation of social distancing requirements. If we experience any technical difficulties, I will adjourn the meeting briefly while officers try to resolve these. If a board member loses connection, I will also call a short adjournment while we try to reconnect them. If this is not possible and the meeting remains quorate, we will continue. If we become inquorate, the meeting will be closed and rescheduled. We will be taking questions from Overview and Scrutiny Committee in the usual way, and I will invite Councillor Dupre, the chair of the committee, to join the meeting for these questions when we reach the relevant items. Can I ask all members to keep your microphones muted unless you wish to speak, and this will minimise background noise. Keep your video turned on throughout the meeting to demonstrate your presence and allow everyone to follow who is speaking, and use the raised hand function to indicate if you wish to speak. And Councillor Herbert has, by the miracle of technology, joined us. So welcome, Councillor Herbert. I can't see you, but I can tell. There we are.
And thank you for your greeting.
And of course, welcome to everybody else. COVID-19 continues to have unprecedented effect on businesses and workers across our region, and we are now starting to see initial impacts on local businesses and unemployment. From February to July, the number of people claiming universal credit in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough increased by 107% to exceed 60,000. The rise in unemployment across the region is concerning, and there are many things we still do not know about the labour market and the long-term economic impacts of COVID-19. I'm trying to visit at least 2 businesses a week this autumn to understand the impacts of the pandemic. And the message I'm getting from business owners I meet is there are reasons to be cautiously optimistic. At the Combined Authority, we are doing everything we can to not only support the businesses hardest hit by the impacts of COVID-19, but to support those companies who can power our local economic recovery. From offering free, impartial one-to-one business advice to helping local SMEs to access the government's Kickstart scheme, we are here to help. And the message I want businesses and people facing unemployment across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to hear is that they are not facing this alone. Finally, I'm conscious that today's meeting has a very full agenda, which may mean that we continue longer than our usual meetings. With this in mind, I'm sure you will support me in seeking to get through matters as efficiently as possible. And with that, I will go immediately on to item 1.1, apologies for absence and declarations of interest. I will begin by calling the names of all members of the Combined Authority Board in order to establish their presence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Ray Bisbee, the Acting Police and Crime Commissioner, and from Jessica Borden, the Director of Primary Care at the Clinical Commissioning Group. Board members with voting rights are Austin Adams, Chair of the Business Board, Councillor Anna Bailey. Austin, you are, I can see you're present. So.
Present, yeah.
Councillor Bailey, Councillor Chris Bowden, Leader of Fenland District Council.
Present.
Councillor Steve Count, Leader of the County Council, Cambridgeshire.
Present.
Councillor Ryan Fuller, Leader of Huntingdonshire District Council.
Present.
Councillor Lewis Herbert, Leader of Cambridge City Council.
Present.
Councillor John Holditch, Leader of Peterborough City Council and Statutory Deputy Mayor.
Present.
And Councillor Bridget Smith, Leader of South Cambridgeshire District Council.
Present.
And our non-voting co-opted board member is Councillor David Over, Vice Chair of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Fire Authority.
Present.
Does any board member or officer wish to declare any interest in relation to today's business? I've got a hand up from Councillor Smith.
So it's probably not relevant, but just in case, in relation to 1.6, which references the LGA model code of conduct constitution. I'm a member of the LGA executive board.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? No other indications, so we will move immediately on to item 1.2 and the minutes. Does anybody have a comment on the minutes at all, please? Councillor Bailey.
Yes, thank you. On page 21, the first paragraph, long paragraph, trying to reflect my comments about the proposed dualling and junctions improvements on the A10. About halfway through that paragraph, it talks about, she asked that officers should investigate how pinch points would be managed if the A10 was dualled and the roundabouts were not taken out. Actually, I was speaking very specifically about the A10, A142, locally known BP roundabout, and the fact that the alignment that was handed over from the indicative alignment that was handed over from the county council to the combined authority from its work showed that roundabout being taken out of the new road structure and the road going off west. So very specifically, it was about how that pinch point would be handled if the road did not take that new proposed alignment that had been handed over. And then also secondly, I did very specifically and explicitly state that we were keen to understand what the solution for the safe crossing of the A10 at in the BP roundabout area for pedestrians, cyclists and equestrians would look like. And I would just ask that that is properly reflected in the minutes because I explicitly asked that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey, and we'll amend the minutes accordingly. I appreciate that. Any other comments on the minutes at all? So I will go, rather than call out your names, I will go with a simple show of hands on the screen if you're all happy. If not, wave at me vigorously and tell me you're not. So that is carried. Appreciate that. Item 1.3 and 1.4, there are no petitions or public questions, but we will be taking several questions from the Overview Scrutiny Committee under the relevant agenda items. Item 1.5 is the forward plan, which is published on the web and updated regularly. If there are any decisions in the forward plan which are allocated to the executive committees but members think should be dealt with by the Combined Authority Board, instead the board will need to take a view. Are there any committee decisions which members would want to be reserved to the board? So thank you, and we've been asked to approve the forward plan. I would move to recommend that recommendation from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Anyone indicate? Councillor Bailey, and as I've had no conjecture again, I will assume that we are happy to support this. So we will move that as unanimous. Thank you. So we go to item 1.6, the governance update and constitution review. In an addendum to the report was published on Friday the 25th of September to reflect the comments and additional recommendations made by the Audit and Governance Committee when it met on Thursday the 24th of September. There is a question on this report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which the Chair of the Committee, Lorna Dupre, Councillor Lorna Dupre, will share with us now.
Good morning, board members. The question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is in two parts. Firstly, what representations has the Combined Authority made to central government on the long-standing issue of the quoracy of Combined Authority committees, and what has been the response? And the second part of the question is, in line with the 7 Nolan Principles of Public Life, is there a commitment for the Business Board to be more transparent and to hold meetings in public session?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dupre. The Business Board is committed to transparency and closely complies with the National Assurance Framework, including the requirement for the Business Board annual general meeting to be open to the public. For all other meetings, transparency is demonstrated by publication of minutes and meeting papers in line with the Local Government Act 1972. The statutory regime provides for confidential and/or exempt information to be excluded from the public domain. As the majority of items considered at Business Board are exempt and/or confidential, adopting a standard practice of public Business Board meetings would be unworkable, as public exclusion would dominate. Given that the Combined Authority Board ratifies funding decisions made by the Business Board, this aspect of Business Board decision is de facto handled in public. This also demonstrates due regard to transparency. On this basis, there are no immediate plans to change the current formation of Business Board meetings. However, that question doesn't fully answer the first part of your question, which is, of course, about the long-standing issue of quorum of Combined Authority committees. So perhaps if I could bring in Mr. Parkin, he would be able to give us the indication from
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm conscious that this is a representation being made to the board via audit and governance as well. A request is put to governments around the specific quoracy requirements applying to overview and scrutiny and audit and governance, which stand separately to those applying to general local authorities. The answer is I'm not aware of any representations having been made as yet. Clearly, if the board wishes to do that today, then it can choose to do so.
Is that satisfactory, Councillor Dupre?
Thank you. The question was historic about representations having been made. If they haven't, then is it your intention to do so?
Again, Mr. Parkin.
So I'm not aware of any having been made is the first answer, and as part of the considerations of the board today, having heard from audit and governance on this point, the board will consider whether it wishes to make representations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can't see any reason why we wouldn't, to be honest with you, but I hadn't been aware of there being an issue previously, but we will certainly look into it. And again, Mr. Parkin, would you like to introduce the report that we have before us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, members. So today we are presenting as officers some proposed changes to and revisions to the Constitution, and we're proposing that those amendments, if adopted, take effect from the 1st of November to allow us time to compile them. Also with a request that any consequential amendments, revisions to place them within the Constitution are allowed to be made. It is an annual requirement of the monitoring officer that the review of the Constitution takes place to consider its currency in terms of the law and to ensure that it's working effectively for the combined authority. This year, a team of officers working with myself have worked with various stakeholders in preparing a range of proposed amendments. We worked with stakeholders, including the corporate management team, the combined authority. We had a workshop of the Audit and Governance Committee prior to taking these proposals through the Audit and Governance Committee. And the journey to today's meeting is via Audit and Governance Committee, who've considered the proposals before you and are making them by way of recommendation for you to consider adoption. Bit of background, we sought to engage a wide group of individuals in terms of their experience of the Constitution and the wider governance issues. We issued a questionnaire. The response rate was low, and it's certainly given us an opportunity to reflect on whether or not different forms of engagement may lie in future years on that. Various points were raised in response, and they give us an insight into matters of governance and support that we give to individuals, whether officers, members or members of the public. Those responses set out in 2.4 of the report you have before you. We have some commentary on the main documents that we're presenting to you today, and these are set out in the body of the report and part 3. We're bringing to you today a Code of Conduct, which is a revision which is based on a document which is a draft at the moment, and it may cause questions as to why we're bringing something that's based on a draft. Well, we've adapted the draft, which looks to us to be fully workable, and we're confident that it fits with legal requirements and represents an advance on the current position and deals with some issues, particularly in relation to interests and leaving the room, which is an area that we want to respond to. We know that whilst the draft document, whilst we're proposing that you adopt this document, it may be in future years that following a change in the law around matters of conduct that we're bringing to you an amended version again, and with that, with a view to the annual activity on constitution reviews, we'd expect to do so. Gifts and hospitality protocol. We have a document setting out how to deal with this, and we have a document on members' use of resources and the code of recommended practice on publicity. There are some changes to the officer employment procedure rules, and I have with me Dermot Pearson, who's worked closely on this element of the work, who's able to talk specifically through those points. I wonder if, Dermot, I could just introduce you to quickly go through in a summary fashion, what we're proposing by way of amendments to the Officer Employment Procedure Rules.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, members. So the purpose of the changes to the Officer Employment Procedure Rules is largely to formally bring the combined authority into line with the arrangements which apply to the constituent councils and the constitutions of those councils. And the reason for that is that there are rules which apply to the constituent councils that don't strictly apply to the combined authority, but would represent best practice. So there are rules containing regulations about the process for recruiting senior officers, and we're recommending to members that those be formally adopted voluntarily by the combined authority. There are also regulations which provide statutory employment protections to heads of paid service, monitoring officers and Section 73 officers. And again, the recommendation is for the combined authority to voluntarily apply those rules to itself. And the purpose of the latter is to reinforce the independence of those statutory officers. And we would say it's in line with the views of the Committee on Standards in Public Life about the importance of those arrangements. Where the proposed officer employment procedure rules do diverge from what you would expect to see in your home authority constitutions, members, is that there are specific arrangements for dealing with interim appointments. The reason for putting those in was that there will be occasions when, because of the legal requirement to have the 3 statutory officers in post at all times, that it's important to be able to recruit quickly to those posts. As it happens at the moment, due to previous recruitment, the monitoring officer and Section 73 posts have permanent post holders in them. Both those post holders have able deputies. So this is more looking to the future. It's not a concern that there'll be any need for urgent recruitment. And with the able deputies, if there's an issue with the availability or whatever of the monitoring officer or Section 73 officer, we have deputies who could simply step up into the role without any drama. So I'm aware that there's some interest in that from members, and I'll deal with questions on whether that's the right way to go in terms of dealing with interim appointments. But the key point was that the reason for writing them down was to achieve transparency so that everyone can see how the combined authority goes about recruiting any interim officers. For completeness, sorry, Bob.
Sorry, Dermot, carry on.
And again, as in the report, the nature of the combined authority's staffing is that in theory there's a number of officers who report to directors who would be deputy chief officers in the legal jargon, and the proposal is that any staffing matters relating to that level of officer should be reserved to the chief executive or head of paid service. And in the discussions with members of audit and governance, I suggested to them that whilst a so-called third tier officer in the county council or wherever might have a massive range of duties, that's not generally going to be the case in the combined authority. I think if I stop there and deal with any queries that members have got, Mr. Mayor, if that would help.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. What we have is we have a couple of amendments. So firstly, I will be moving an amendment from the chair, and then Councillor Herbert also has an amendment. So the amendment that I wish to propose from the chair is to delete paragraphs 3.2, 3.3 and 3.4 and insert a new paragraph 3.2 which is as follows: where it is necessary to appoint an interim head of paid service, chief executive, monitoring officer or Section 73 officer, chief finance officer, brackets, on an urgent basis, that appointment shall be made by the Employment Committee. And do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Mr. Adams has indicated. Thank you, Mr. Adams. So we're open to debate the amendment first. Members.
Chair, and my amendment arrived first and you've superseded it, Mayor?
Okay. Perhaps, Mr. Parker, you could give us advice on
So Mr. Mayor is able to manage the meeting in his own as he wishes. I think he's entitled to propose this amendment first.
Well, my point to you as monitoring officer is that the members of the board have had no notice of this amendment. It's just arrived a minute or three before the start of the meeting. I had the good grace to share my more thorough amendment last Friday, which was discussed with yourself. And I personally think that it is good practice, and I follow this practice, that the first amendment should be the first one that has been tabled. And mine arrived 4 or 5 days ago and has been fully discussed, including at a meeting with the Mayor yesterday. I think this is really destructive practice, putting forward a different alternative without any opportunity to discuss it, particularly as we had a meeting on this yesterday.
So speaking from just to comment in response, my perspective is we've been working with a number of amendments, some of which were, well, all of which have been developed and finalised quite late. My view is that we can take it in this sequence, and I support the chair in doing so.
Well, I will speak not to this amendment, but I will speak to my own amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Herbert, for those points. As Mr. Parkin said, there have been a number of amendments that have been put forward late this morning. We have speakers put forward, and Councillor Smith has got her hand up. Councillor Smith.
So not on this amendment, Mayor, but it's going to get really confusing if we are leaping around between discussing the appendices here. I would respectfully request that we deal with each of the appendices in turn. Otherwise, we're really not going to know where we're at, and actually people listening into this are not going to understand where we're at. So I'd request that we start off dealing with the matters in Appendix 1 and move forward that way, rather than starting at the back the way we're doing.
Okay, but the appendices have been taken as one for a vote, and obviously the amendments that have been put are as the standard practice, of course, to take amendments and debate them, and then debate the full document. So I think it's appropriate, I believe, and Mr. Parkin could come in and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the usual practice is to debate amendments and then to debate the document in full.
Okay, so as long as you're aware that I have an amendment which relates to Appendix 1, I
am
aware, Councillor. You are, okay, yeah, and Appendix.
If I could come in to assist,
fine.
yeah. Obviously, we have quite a lot of documents here, and it seems that taking one at a time with the amendment alongside it is going to be easier to manage. So I'd certainly support that. It's open, of course. The rules of procedure allow us to discuss 2 amendments at the same time and vote upon them separately. Now, it seems that the natural sequence is to hear the Mayor's amendment first and to hear from Councillor Lewis Herbert, but you may find yourself referring to either. But yeah, that procedural rule just allows recognition of the fact that these points sometimes cross over. So yeah, so just to clarify then, we'll obviously be taking the Mayor's first, but we will go on to the rest of the document suite, and if any other amendments arise in relation to those after this, then we can talk to them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey.
I just wanted to support the view that the Mayor's amendment should come first, because, you know, the papers effectively come from the Chair, and the Chair is proposing an amendment to the paper as it stands. So I think it's perfectly normal practice in certainly our local authority, that if the person, you know, putting forward the paper wants to make an amendment to their own paper, that's perfectly normal, and that would be tabled, and that would come first. So I don't think this is anything unusual, Councillor Herbert, if you don't mind me saying. And I think it's perfectly procedurally correct, and probably what you follow as practice in your own authority. So I totally support the amendment coming first. The one thing I would say is that I think it's you know, the process of amendments has not been an easy process, because I think it would be much more helpful if people working up their amendments could do so, you know, in private, without sending around many different versions of amendments with last minute changes that come before us, because then we end up with, you know, a number of different versions, different emails flying around on the same subject, and it's very difficult for people to even keep track. I'm not talking about Councillor Herbert's amendment, which was just perfectly sensibly put forward, but last week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith.
So I was asked when I submitted mine if it could be displayed on the screen. Mayor Palmer, could we have yours displayed on the screen as well, please?
I'm sure that's possible, Mr. Parkin. Is that possible to display?
Yes, Rishandra will assist by doing so now. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I'll introduce it.
Could you scroll down gently, please, so that members can see the amendment? Councillor Count.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's okay. I'll try and speak to the amendment. I think we're at that stage now. And also, I must point out, for some reason or another, I have the system. I've been out of the meeting for 2 or 3 minutes. I hope I haven't missed anything vital, or in fact, I'm a bit repetitive. But I believe I know where we are on this. In this point. First of all, thank Lewis for his initial amendments, which he's mentioned so far, which has led to some thinking on this subject. And where I view this amendment as being the appropriate end result of those discussions that we had yesterday, and it's because we only had them yesterday, perhaps things weren't circulated in advance last week, but it was because that those amendments put forward by Lewis Herbert didn't have uniform or unanimous receipt as well. The difference between this and the original papers really boils down to when we need an interim head of service or an interim Section 73 officer, chief finance officer. And the previous process in the concerns of the Section 73 officer, that interim process would be entirely dealt with by the chief executive. And in terms of the head of the paid service, that would entirely have been dealt with by the mayor. Under this paragraph, this amendment, it will be dealt with by the employment committee. And I do feel that these two appointments are so significant, even on an interim basis, that an employment committee can be organised, raised, put together, and we will deal with that if it's necessary. Let's hope it's never necessary, but I do think that it's important that we move in that direction from the original paperwork. So I'm happy to support this amendment, and do agree that there are some similarities with the one that Councillor Herbert put forward. I think this is a neater end solution for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers on this amendment? Okay, then I'm happy to take the amendment to the vote. And we will start with Mr. Adams.
Accept.
I'm going to need to remember my alphabet here. Councillor Bowden.
Agreed.
Councillor Bailey.
Agreed.
Councillor Herbert.
Against.
Councillor Holditch.
For.
Okay, Councillor Count, apologies that I missed you. I'm going around the screen. Okay, you're for Councillor Smith.
Same.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Okay. And so I believe that is carried. And now, Councillor Herbert, you are going to put an amendment to the amendment, I believe.
Well, I would substitute my amendment for this amendment. And I come back on process. I mean, this really is an ambush and a hijack of a good discussion, Mayor. I proposed my amendment last Friday. It was a culmination of 3 or 4 days exchanges and a meeting with the legal officers of the combined authority. And I just think it flies in the face of good democratic process to suddenly produce an amendment that arrives late. So I'm grateful for it, my amendment being put on screen, and if it could be put on so that people could see the 3 paragraphs that I propose, then I can explain it. I think that the way this has been handled also prompts me, Mayor, just to state a bit of background. We have not had a good record in terms of employment practice, particularly at senior level. And I've a series of emails, particularly in exchange with Kim Sawyer when she was head of legal services and later as chief executive. And perhaps at the centre of it is the fact that we've apparently, and we did as a board, we ratified your decision to appoint joint chief executives without a proper interview. The employment committee hasn't met for nearly 18 months. And that, maybe it didn't have a lot of business, but the purpose of it and the purpose of this amendment is really to follow the process that we've followed when we did make good appointments of senior officers. So I'm particularly concerned about chief executive interims, and I'm glad, Mayor, that you've come away from your original proposal, which was a paper that proposed that you would make the appointment of an interim chief executive. And I'm glad that the employment committee has been proposed, but you're also in the constitution altering the employment committee so it includes all the leaders of the combined authority. And in my view, that is unwieldy. No local authority has really large employment committees. We've recently successfully appointed an interim chief executive to take over tomorrow from our outstanding chief executive that we've had for 11 years. And that process was conducted by a smaller committee. And that's why I believe that that is the right process. So what your amendment effectively does is it requires all the leaders to take part in that employment route. I believe subcommittees are the right approach. I'm very unhappy at appointments that have been made either by the chief executive of the combined authority or one of the joint chief executives, namely appointing a monitoring officer or Section 73 officer, which has then been ratified by the board. So we've gone through processes, both in terms of appointing a joint chief executive without a proper interview process. We've gone through processes which have had no real member involvement other than ratification on the monitoring officer in Section 73. And I believe that those similar processes, collective approach process, should apply to all of the people that report to the chief executive too. So the substance of my amendment over yours is that I believe it is a direct and workable process, so that we actually have a subcommittee, and that subcommittee exists, it meets, it actually works out what it's going to do, and it then includes you as mayor. And there hasn't been big changes other than I'm happy for you to be chair of this. And I just believe that the combined authority needs to adopt the same processes as local authorities. It hasn't been helped because of this grey area that combined authorities have not been given clear guidance by government. And therefore it has had to find its own way. But I believe it's far better to have a subcommittee. In terms of other issues, I just think that that we have, as I've said, too often had decisions made by single individuals for ratification. And I would urge you, Mayor, on all appointments, and that includes directors reporting to the chief executive, and also other appointments, including where we interview for boards that you might set up and companies that you set up, that these appointment processes include wide advertising, it can establish and demonstrate that there is a wide field that's been reached. That gives the confidence to really important people that we want to attract to this organisation, and has a process which is clear. So I move my amendment. I do believe that we've lost some ground in terms of our reputation as an authority in the way that we've handled senior appointments. And I think that we need to have a strong process, not all of the leaders, but a strong process that can deliver sound appointments in the future. So I move my amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Herbert. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't support this amendment. I do feel that the one that you've put forward, Mayor, which was worked up based on the meeting that, you know, this amendment from Lewis Herbert prompted. So there is value here. But I'd just like to talk about some of the differences and the way it's been tidied up for the benefit of all, and some of the comments that have been made. So first of all, the comment about the grey area that the combined authority has worked in the past, because it is not technically a local authority. You know, you can't have it both ways. You can't have us working as a local authority and following those rules of guidance, and then which is what we are working to and improving our constitution now on the basis of Dermot's advice to say that we are moving towards what is regarded as the best practice for local authorities, but was clearly not actually laid down for combined authorities, which used a different, more business-like approach rather than the sort of more transparent one we're used to in local governance. So we're moving in that direction, and you say you can't have that one way and then complain that it was different in the past when we're actually improving matters and trying to deal with it that way. In terms of the actual positions that are named, the difference between Councillor Herbert's and yours really centres the main difference is the monitoring officer is not covered here. All right. Now, I think there's a very valid reason for that. If you need to urgently appoint an interim monitoring officer, which as the current constitution, if we adopt it, it would fall to the chief exec. The position of
if I could come in, Councillor Count, the monitoring officer is mentioned in the amendment that we voted on. Maybe not on Councillor Herbert's, but it is in the amendment that's already been voted on and passed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I shall move away from that subject area then. Okay, so moving on to the main difference then that that this is whether it's a subcommittee or a main committee. Now we are talking about chief executive and senior officers and the ability to influence that decision making prior to what should we call ratification by the board. If an employment committee met to interview and lay out the specifications that Councillor Lewis Herbert has so rightfully described, the advertising, the way that we're going to go about it, has met, and somehow I personally, as the leader of Cambridgeshire County Council, did not make it onto that employment subcommittee, I would feel as if on such a valuable appointment, I've been missed out. Now, by using the new employment committee, which includes all of us, the ability to bring that forward at speed, as we are allowed subs, is there. There are quoracy rules. So we can actually, if we or we appoint a sub, attend. So it's incredibly valuable. I don't want to move forward in a sphere where the chief exec is appointed by ratification at the Combined Authority Board, and I wasn't personally involved, or one of the other leaders, I'm involved and one of the other leaders isn't. And that is the biggest difference there between the two. So I think that that is a very useful move to go to the employment committee. And by doing that, it does actually remove the need for 3.4 entirely, which is a messy addition to this. Now, I'm sorry it perhaps wasn't handled in the way that Councillor Herbert would have liked, but it is, I believe, that we've got a much tidier and a much more all-embracing, solid foundation to move forward by utilising all of us rather than a subcommittee. So I'm sorry I cannot support this, but I'm glad that I supported the one put forward earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Count. Councillor Smith.
So are you asking for a seconder, Mayor, by the way?
Well, usually we would debate the amendment and then ask for a seconder, but if you would like to put yourself forward as a seconder, you
Yeah,
obviously
so
can.
Thank you. So I will put myself forward as a seconder. So just a couple of points. So I welcome the will to align our policies and procedures with that of the constituent authorities. I think that's absolutely right. Where I think this deviates is over this matter of urgent appointments. You know, any one of the constituent members of the combined authority could be in a position where they have to make an urgent appointment. And, you know, for my own authority, that is that's recommendation is made by my employment committee, and it's then ratified by full council. So I don't see why something different is required by the combined authority. You know, we have had a number of urgent appointments had to be made, as we're hoping that that's all in the past now. And I do think, you know, picking up on Councillor Steve Count's comment, that actually as constituent councils, actually we do have a very, very business-like approach to this. But it has to be open and transparent and, you know, available for scrutiny. You know, members of the public have got to have confidence that there is a proper process and that we are adhering to that proper process. And, you know, the company my husband works for, he does lots of appointments. Again, there's process there, which is business-like. It's just different processes. So I wouldn't like anybody to think local authorities aren't business-like in the way they do this. But I support what Councillor Herbert has put forward, and I think many members of the public might do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further speakers, so the amendment is put and seconded, and I will go across the board. Councillor Adams, sorry, Mr. Adams. Sorry to demote you to the level of other members of the rest of the board. Austin, Mr. Adams.
I'm afraid I couldn't support this, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Be clear, we're voting on Councillor Herbert's amendment.
Yes, we are.
Yes,
Against Councillor Bowden.
Against.
Councillor Count.
Against.
Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Herbert.
Oh.
Councillor Holditch.
Against.
And Councillor Smith.
For.
Okay, thank you. So that is defeated. And we can now go to the original, we go back to the original motion, but as amended. But Councillor Smith, I believe you have a further amendment. Is that correct?
I do, and if that could be put on the screen, that'd be really helpful. So this pertains in particular to Appendix 1 and Appendix 3. Thank you very much. So, and in relation to page 51 and the box that shows what the decision's being made. So my change is to number 1, which says as it stands to approve and adopt the revisions to the Constitution detailed in this report with effect from the 1st November 2020. And then my words are, with the exception of the Code of Conduct, until such time as the LGA Model Code of Conduct is published in final form. Now, my reason for doing this is that I think it's inadvisable for us to adopt a Code of Conduct which is merely a consultation document. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the LGA board, and this has been open to very, very wide consultation. And I do not expect the final version to look particularly similar to what's already there. So I'm very happy to go through either at this stage or late. You know, if you do not accept my amendment, then when we actually debate it afterwards, I will go through all the issues that I think there are with it. And as a consultee, and I imagine most of the people on this call also fed back into the LGA about the things that are not right with it. It was just a starting point, and the LGA is very adept at its consultations, and things changed dramatically as a result. So I just feel it's inadvisable, I could use stronger words, but inadvisable to adopt something which is a consultation document. And I think we can, I mean, I do understand the DMHCLG and so on are looking for a more robust code of conduct that's more suited to us. But just by doing this, we actually risk getting it wrong. I couldn't sign it as it stands at the moment, basically, and I say I will talk later about any of the problems I see with it if you don't accept this. But I think we could just wait a little bit until we've got the model code of conduct. Then there will be a small bit of work to do to that to make it suitable for combined authority. And then I think it can probably go through on the nod. But as it stands at the moment, there's lots of problems with it. And that's what happens when you have consultation documents. People pick up on all sorts of problems, which I'll speak about later if this isn't acceptable to you.
No, okay, Councillor Smith. Can I just ask a question to Mr. Parkin regarding this? It's my impression, or Mr. Pearson, whichever, it's my impression that obviously we are taking this constitution from the Local Government Association. This is a standard practice, of course. Is it not part of the plan as such that as the LGA Code of Conduct is published in its full form and final form, that it will be automatically adopted into the combined authority through this document? Is that where we are? Could I have some officer confirmation?
Happy to assist, Mr. Mayor. No, we wouldn't automatically say that we would adopt whatever comes out of that process. That would take another presentation of this nature to the board. If I could just follow on a little bit, we work with in local government all sorts of documents from different origins. Certainly, and the law doesn't require us to adopt a common standard. And indeed, the LGA standard does depend upon changes in law to actually be fully correct. But we do consider that whatever its provenance, this document is fit for purpose. And as I mentioned earlier, it is an annual review, an activity to review the Constitution and ensure that it's current. So I would certainly envisage that once the LGA have completed that process and that code's been published, that we'd be considering it, bringing it at audit and governance and bringing it back if it was the right thing in our view for this authority. So it's not automatic.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Members, you've heard Councillor Smith make her points and you've heard Mr. Parkin's clarification of where we are. So I'll open it for debate, and Councillor Herbert first up.
Well, I'd just like to follow up, Mayor, with a question further to Mr. Parkin. I'm still a bit mystified about what we're actually adopting, because I think Councillor Smith made a fair point, which is that this is work in progress at the LGA, that whilst I welcome the work that you've been doing on developing a stronger code of conduct, particularly on this issue, which I plan to come back to on both senior officers and members not properly, in my view, acting when they had a serious interest. Isn't it the case, Mr. Parkin, that what you proposed is to adopt a draft document, and therefore Councillor Smith has a perfectly valid point that we are adopting something that is sort of a mishmash because it's still work in progress?
Happy to respond. So any document, of course, is draft until the point we consider it final form and satisfactory and fit for purpose. What we have presented to you has been adapted in some ways to fit it to this context. Of course, we've removed those elements that depend on changes in law, and we're presenting it to yourselves as a good document which will meet the purposes of the combined authority. It may be that through processes of consultation that there are further revisions to it, but that absolutely doesn't undermine the fact that the document we're presenting to you today is fit for purpose in our recommendation and relevance. I don't know if sorry.
No, just to be clear then, Mr. Parkin, what is the process when the LGA does adopt its final updated model code of conduct? Because there's nothing in the recommendations to tidy this bit up.
So how to come back. I would say that we're not presenting something that leaves it untidy, number one. Number two, unlike the pre-2011 legislative position, there's no legal requirement to adopt a common standard at the moment. The obligation upon local authorities, and in this context, the combined authorities caught within that, is to adopt a code of conduct which incorporates the Nolan principles, and that certainly, this document certainly does that, and it also tidies up some points of particular concern to the combined authority. We can actually absolutely take away as an additional requirement upon us to report back through audit and governance when the LGA standard is agreed upon pertinent changes and whether it's advisable for the combined authority to adopt them. But there isn't an automatic requirement. There isn't a requirement to adopt that standard. As I say, it would be picked up in the annual review in any event, but we can certainly make sure that it goes through to audit and governance once published, with an evaluation of whether there are any further changes that we should
I'd appreciate that to be recorded as a commitment, because this is a draft, and that Councillor Smith has a valid point in that regard.
Can I just again? I just want a clarification, because I think Mr. Parkin, obviously you're the professional in the room, and I've been told here by Councillor Smith and Councillor Herbert that this is untidy and a draft and not fit for purpose. Can you clarify the professional opinion of what is being put before members here?
Yeah, of course. My professional opinion, and we worked on this as a team with Dermot. We've had experience of local authority codes of conduct and working with a wide variety. We know the legal standard. And we know the core content that must be there. This document certainly meets that requirement. It's fit for purpose. It's not untidy. It may, in some other contexts, be treated as a draft, but we've tweaked the document as a source document, and we're presenting it to you as something that's fit for purpose and is tidy. I think Dermot can come in if he wants to add anything to that, but he won't. Yeah, we certainly wouldn't be presenting something to you that wasn't that.
Okay. Appreciate that, and thank you. And could members be respectful, please, of the professional views of the officers. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, this seems to be getting sort of hijacked by some members trying to portray this as, accepting something that is unacceptable. It is the content of what is before us that we're being asked to accept. So that's what we need to focus on. The fact that the content has been made up from, different source documents is not what's important. What's important is what we're being asked to adopt. So it's the detail of the papers before us that we need to concentrate on. And if members have problems with the detail, I think it'd be extremely helpful if they put those forward now. And I would ask Councillor Smith to go through her issues in advance of voting on her amendment, so that we can hear what her issues are, because clearly if there are fundamental issues and others agree with any of those issues, then it's important that we take account of those. So I'd ask that to happen. But for me, this paper has been through clearly many officers' hands in the combined authority. It's been through our audit and governance committee, who have made some helpful comments, and those are reflected in the papers that are before us today. It's coming through us, and we have the right to make any amendments if we need to and want to. Amendments have been made, they're here before us. It's not a document that's set in stone. It does get reviewed periodically, I think on an annual basis. I think I heard Mr. Parkin say, so it is subject to future updates. So I would ask everybody to concentrate on the document that is before us and try and put aside the fact that the content has come from different places. What's important is that whether we are comfortable with what is before us. And I've read through it very carefully. It is all very familiar territory. I think there's some helpful updates in there. I particularly welcome the new proposals around the default situation being that you are acting in your capacity as a member of an authority, because this is something that I've come up against time and again with code of conduct complaints that fail because there's a debate or a difference of opinion about whether somebody was acting in their capacity as a member of a local authority, when in my view they quite clearly were, because they were talking about council business and talking about fellow councillors, and they've been ruled that they've been not acting in their capacity, and I think that's a nonsense. So I particularly welcome the default position on that. I think that's helpful, and I think there are some other very helpful additions. One of the things that bothers me where we haven't got to yet is, you know, and it was recognised in the commentary, the lack of consequences for failure to apply with code of conduct. And I think this was something that happened when the Localism Act new rules came in, and there were very few, apart from the very serious consequences if you do something criminal, there are frankly no consequences, and people can ignore code of conduct rulings, for example, that ask them to make reparations by apology and that sort of thing, and there are no consequences, and that's been recognised. And I hope that the eventual outcome of all of this will be that there will be some new consequences, because I think it's not good that there are not consequences, other than, you know, the worst that happens is a bit of a slap on the wrist, maybe at a, you know, full council or combined authority board meeting. So I do welcome this. I am very content with the draft that we have before us. It's been through many eyes, many hands, people far more professionally qualified than me to put forward a proper document, and I'm feeling perfectly in a place to accept it. But I would like to hear Councillor Smith's, because she's been very close to this work at the LGA by the sounds of it, so I would like to hear her detailed comments before we take the vote on her amendment. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Well, I think you're going to have your chance, because Councillor Smith is very next to speak.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bailey. I'll do just that. So I support much of what Councillor Bailey has said. She's, you know, there is much here that's good. But if I just give you 3 examples of things which are unacceptable to me at the moment. So if we go to page 64, it under the on the first page it says, "In undertaking my role, I will," and then there's 5 bullet points, and the key thing is "I will," and the 5th bullet point says, "Ensure that public resources are used prudently and in the public interest." Now, of course, that is what's key to what we do.
Councillor Smith, I'm so sorry to so rudely interrupt. Can you just slow down, because I really want to genuinely properly hear this.
Now, so
are you on the revised version that came from Audit and Governance?
No, I'm on the main pack, but I have had a quick look at them, and I couldn't see any changes when I looked. But so I'm on the original.
Sorry, can you just give me a second to get to where you are? So you're in the main agenda pack,
page 64, going over onto page 65, Councillor Bailey.
I'm looking at the version that has had amendments because they've come through from Audit and Governance. So page 64. Right, okay, I'm on the same page now. Can you start again? Sorry to interrupt.
Fine. So no, you're very welcome. It's best that we get this clear. So at the bottom bit, there's 4 bullet points at the bottom bit, and then a 5th bullet point at the top of page 65. So it says, "In undertaking my role, I will." And then the 5th of those bullet points says, "Ensure that public resources are used prudently and in the public interest." Now, of course, that is vitally important to all of us. But the way the combined authority works, since we're democratic, and sometimes if I see money being spent in a way that I don't think is prudent or in the public interest, and I vote against it, but the majority of the members vote for it, then that means that my ability to promise to ensure that public resources are used prudently in the public interest cannot be carried through. So, I mean, I would be proposing that would say, "I will endeavour," something like that, because it's not in my power to dictate how combined authority money is spent. Right? It's in the board's power. As a member of the board, it's in my power, but it's not in my power as a member of the board to promise that money will always be spent in what I deem to be a prudent manner and public interest. So that's point 1. I'll give you 2 more. So if we go over onto page 66, right, at number 5, which is in bold, This says, this is confidentiality and access to information. And it says, not disclosing information given to me in confidence or disclosing information acquired by me, which I believe is of a confidential nature, unless I have received the consent of a person authorized to give it, or I am required by law to do so. Well, again, I think that needs more explanation, because I think it potentially conflicts with whistleblowing policies, because sometimes, you know, we have to make really difficult decisions on confidentiality because there are, you know, there are wider issues. So I think that's potentially restrictive, and I think there needs to be more narrative about that in relation to the combined authority. And then I'll give you a third one, which is a small point. At the bottom of page 67, under breaches of the Code of Conduct, it says, most members, most, conduct themselves appropriately and in accordance with these standards. Now, that wording, if you say most members, it implies that some don't. And I actually take huge issue with that, because, you know, I would like my starting point to be that members conduct themselves appropriately and in accordance with these standards. I think to say most implies that some don't. And okay, we know, you know, in reality some don't. But actually, if I'm signing that up to that, I think it's just a very, very poor use of words. And if we want to give confidence to the public that we all take our responsibilities and our conduct really seriously, our starting point has to not be acceptance that some people won't abide by a code of conduct, but an understanding that all will. So I hope that gives you a bit of, yeah, that's my kind of starter for 3.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I had waited with some interest to hear the comments of Councillor Smith, and I assume, and I'm sure that Councillor Smith will nod her head at this, that Councillor Smith has given 3 examples, and she could give more examples of what she's not happy with in this document. I think it's really important that we do move forwards quickly and get a code of conduct in place which is better than the current situation that we've got. And I do accept that the current document is a coherent one which we can adopt. If it is desired, and it appears to be desired by most, that when the LGA produces a final version of their proposed code of conduct, and we don't know when that will be produced, it has to be said, nothing is certain, but if that is decided to be appropriate, we can then amend our code of conduct to match what the LGA are saying. And in the examples which have been given by Councillor Smith, I think these are really not fundamental problems with the code of conduct. For example, when talking about the problem of ensuring public resources are used prudently and in the public interest, it's qualified by saying that is when undertaking my role, I will do that. So it's not asking for a member of the authority to do more than they're capable of doing within their role, because Councillor Smith is entirely correct. She doesn't make decisions by herself as to what resources are used prudently and what is in the public interest. But in undertaking her role when casting a vote, which is her role, then it's perfectly appropriate that she should, as we all should, ensure that public resources are used prudently and in the public interest. So these are relatively minor points which are made. The point which was made about most members conduct themselves, well, most also includes all. So I don't feel that necessarily we are saying there are some members who are not conducting themselves appropriately. We're not saying that at all. The word most includes all. Now, I make that point, which is a fairly specific point, just to show that these are changes which could be made potentially, but they're hardly fundamental to the working of this document. So I'd be interested to hear if Councillor Smith has any more substantial criticisms of this document. And I'm a little bit disappointed that these details haven't come out at an earlier stage for us to be able to discuss and consider them. But I'm more than willing to listen to any more suggestions that Councillor Smith has got, if they are of a substantial nature. And I don't believe that the ones we've heard so far are of a substantial nature. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, a lot of what Councillor Bowden has just made sense. I was picking up, trying to follow Councillor Bridget Smith's arguments, and I was picking up on the very similar points. In fact, I'll just add into the last one, the one concerning the word most. Most councillors are well behaved. It uses that initial thing to justify the need for a code of conduct. But it goes on throughout that paragraph to say that sometimes people do fall short and the public expect us to hold our members to account. So if you started the paragraph saying that all members uphold the the rule of law and transparency to the utmost, you would never need a code of conduct, and that is the sole purpose of the wording there. I totally agree that what we saw last time when we handled the Constitution on the day that we were dragged through quite a myriad of points on the day, a lot of them last year with typographical or cross-reference points which we couldn't actually follow or deal with and would have been best dealt with beforehand. And we're seeing today that the fact that this was not acceptable to Bridget, Councillor Smith, sorry, has been raised in a few emails leading to this amendment, but today is the first time we've actually heard the substance of those. And these first 3 points does not render the document either unworkable or into such a state that I would not wish to support it. We heard from Dermot Parkin earlier, who is our qualified monitoring officer, and he described this as fully workable and an advance on the current position. Now, most of this this particular section regards members' code of conduct, and I must assure you that is key to me, that we absolutely improve the standards of members at all levels. So I'm not prepared to sit on a document that isn't unimproved whilst we wait for the perfect flawless diamond to come along. This is an improvement. There will be more work done on it, I have no doubt, and we will build that in, as monitoring officer has described, in the future. So there might be a word wrong here or a word misallocated there, but it's actually an improvement. And I don't want us to waste any time improving the code of conduct for members because of this amendment. So therefore, I must, unless some more substantial points than the ones we've heard come forward, I must agree with Councillor Bowden and vote against this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Count. Councillor Herbert.
So mine's a pretty short point, and I think this debate is also underlining that it's more difficult to discuss these over a Zoom than it would be in the room. So I know that's not going to happen early, but it does underline it. I just would seek, Mayor, a commitment and a commitment from Mr. Parkin that we will bring the Code of Conduct back for a bit of trimming and checking when the LGA does finalise its Code of Conduct. Councillor Bowden suggested that as well, and I just think if we added that as a line into the recommendation, I would be happy on that. I have another point on other parts of the Constitution, but I'll hold that for later.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think Mr. Parkin has already indicated that, and certainly I'm supportive of that. I think the other thing that we all know as members, you know, there is no position that is concrete on Code of Conduct or on Constitution. These things are constantly amended to keep up with changes in the law and obviously changes in practice, etc. So it is entirely appropriate that we are looking at this. We were planning to look at this anyway, and it is entirely appropriate that we will continue to look at this and continue to make sure that we are up to date and within the rules of where we're supposed to be. And I don't feel that there's ever been any desire other than to do that. And there's certainly, I've never been involved in any authority where there hasn't been. So I'll go back to Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. So just to reflect on what Councillor Count has said, I absolutely accept that this is an advance on what we have, and I welcome that. If we can have a formal undertaking that as soon as the LGA's finalised version is available, that we will revisit it. But I think we need to do more than just revisit it in a public meeting like this. It needs to come to one of our strategy meetings where we can really, we can really thrash it out. And so that by the time we get to this stage, it is something that we're all really comfortable about signing up to, we all think really adds value. If I can have a formal commitment to that, I will withdraw my amendment.
Yeah, well, look, I think, Councillor Smith, if I may, the usual practice, I believe, and forgive me if I'm wrong, is to send this through audit for it to be looked at and then to be sent through to the Combined Authority Board. If leaders feel that as amendments and as updates to the Constitution come through, they want to discuss them at leaders' strategy, I'm entirely open and happy for that to happen. Of course, we have a very vigorous audit committee who have worked very, very hard. We've been internally audited twice and externally audited once. At the last Combined Authority Board, I believe, the chairman of audit came along and said he had no need to have been to talk to the Combined Authority Board at all because everything was in order. And he was very, very robust in his praise for chief executives and officers in particular. I think that, we have been criticised by MHCLG, and this is one of the reasons why Councillor Smith and Councillor Herbert are energised, I believe. But what is clear is that those criticisms do not tie in with either internal or external audit. So there is an issue as to where information is going into MHCLG and how it is getting there. And I think that's something we also have to be honest and challenging about. Our job is to be as transparent as possible. And what we're being told is through our audit that we absolutely are, and we are offering best practice. I see no change in that with this. And I absolutely, Councillor Smith, accept your challenge, and I absolutely accept that we would look at this again as changes were made. In actual fact, I think that's what we would always do and have always done. So with your permission, Councillor Smith, if there is agreement, we will ask for Mr. Parkin, with his expert, clear, professional advice that he's given us, to take any future changes through Audit Committee and then obviously on to leaders, if that is acceptable to you, Councillor Smith.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. We will then go on to discuss the substantial paper. Councillor Herbert.
I object to your recent comment that I've been energised by MHCLG. As the Joint Chief Executive, Kim Sire, knows, I've had about 15 exchanges over the last 3.5 years on various aspects that are covered by today. If I just might...
Can I just, Councillor Herbert, I don't think I've mentioned your name at any stage or the names of any members at all.
I'm afraid you did. You said that Councillor Smith, Mayor, you will need to listen to your own words in the recording. You said that Councillor Herbert and Councillor Smith had been energised by MHCLG.
I said by the letter that was sent by MHCLG, so let's make that quite clear.
Well, okay. I just saved 2 words, but I object to that and I refute that allegation. I have not been energised. I've demonstrated throughout a keen interest in the workings of the Constitution. I helped and it gave significant input to Kim Sire in drafting the original Constitution. I think it's a great shame that you are the lead member for governance, because that does not, in my view, demonstrate independence, and independence and collective decisions are being made today. I just want to raise a couple of further points. First of all, I do really welcome the fact that the adoption of this interim code of conduct does clarify the issue of declarations of interest and people leaving the room. I have been involved in 2 occasions, and they are a couple of years ago on the Combined Authority, where a leader of a council and also a joint chief executive acted without propriety, in my view, because they contributed to discussions where they had a significant financial interest, or they were representing an authority that had that interest. And so I do welcome the fact that people should leave the room if they've got a significant interest. On one occasion, no interest was declared at all as part of that meeting. So I think that clarity is really valuable. The other area I do think is important to draw attention to is the treatment of senior staff. And I do think that there is some strengthening here assisted by Mr. Parkin, because all senior staff, before they're either pushed out the door or sacked, and we've had 2 serious occasions of this, Mayor, should have a clear right of appeal. And whilst on many occasions with a member of the senior staff, the best avenue is a resolution behind closed doors because it isn't working, I do welcome the fact that there is a clear process for that appeal. I think all of our members of staff should be fearless, and this goes also into the issues that Councillor Smith raised about whistleblowing. We need to be a transparent authority without secrets. So I welcome that change. And I welcome wider changes in the document because I think it is a significant improvement.
Can I just put a clarification, Councillor Herbert? Are you suggesting that as an authority, we operated a policy where there was no right to appeal?
Well,
I'd like clarification of if that is the case, because I would expect that certainly not to be the case.
Well, what I'm saying is I appreciate the improvements and clarity that the new constitution gives us on that. If people didn't exercise that right to appeal, that would have been their choice, Mayor. I'm not suggesting that there wasn't choices available, but I do believe that we have to have a clear and transparent right to appeal, and that is better in the revised wording.
Well, I'm of the opinion, and I'm happy to be told if I'm wrong by the senior professionals in the room, that of course we've always operated under employment law and the right to appeal has been absolute, and at no stage so far has there been an appeal against the combined authority. So I just think clarification on that. This allegation and fact are 2 different things entirely. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much indeed. So I've just got 2 other points in relation to the rest of the appendices I want to bring up. Appendix 3, Councillor Bailey, I'm going to have to work from my original pack because the other lot that I received doesn't have page numbers on it, I'm afraid. So this is page 77. So this is the protocol on member use of resources and the code of recommended practice on local authority publicity. Now, my problem with this is it references resources that, you know, members of the board might have. Office premises, stationery, postage, telephones, copying facilities, administrative and secretarial support, laptops, email accounts. Now, I've had a conversation with Mr. Parkin today about this. So I just am concerned that by signing this, members of the public will think that I'm sitting here surrounded by laptops and telephones that are paid for by the combined authority, where actually I get nothing, and my laptop and my telephone are paid for by me. So I wasn't aware until this morning that apparently I've got a combined authority email address. Nobody ever told me that. So I don't. For me, as a board member, I think this is potentially risky because members of the public might think that I'm in receipt of all these goodies. I'm sure, you know, the mayor is a different matter, and of course, you know, he needs to have Kit to do his significant job as mayor. Obviously, I have officers around to, I can ring up Kim and Kim will advise me about stuff. But that's no different to what I get out of Huntingdonshire Council. If I need to ring up and speak to Councillor Fuller's chief exec, it's no different to what I'd expect from partner authorities. So I think I'm covered within my own code of conduct here. So I'm not happy about that, and I won't be signing that. And then my other concern is on page 86. And this is the annex to the Officer Employment Procedure Rules and the protocol on appointments within the mayoral office. So number G refers to the mayor's appointments. And one of the rules, it says, helping to brief members of the board, MPs and external officials on issues of mayoral policy, liaising with outside interest groups. Got no issue with those. Then it says representing the mayor at meetings and elsewhere. And I do have an issue with that. The mayor has a deputy. Surely it is the deputy's responsibility to represent the mayor at meetings and elsewhere if the mayor cannot go. So I would like that taken out because I think it's inappropriate if, you know, in a number of situations that it is a non-elected member representing the mayor when he has a deputy who I'm sure is champing at the bit, I'm looking at Councillor Holditch, to do this at every opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just quickly respond on the point around resources? Yeah, so as members of the combined authority, members are drawn from the constituent authorities, but it doesn't mean that you're not just as much members of the combined authority as you are members of the constituent authorities. So whilst whenever you place a call to Kim or myself, it may feel like an inquiry, actually, our role is very much for yourselves as members as well. So we are a resource to you. And I just wanted to be clear on that. We're not we're not there just to, as it were, respond to queries as like an external party. You're members very much, and therefore we are resources for you as members.
Yeah, can I just a point of clarification on Councillor Smith's point about representation of the mayor? Is it right that this is standard practice across combined authorities and of course the Mayoral Authority of London to have representation for the mayor in meetings?
Is that a question to myself?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so Dermot has looked at this and is able to, no doubt, quickly be able to say what he referred to in drawing this up.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a significant difference between a formal meeting, clearly, and informal representation of in informal meetings. Perhaps,
if I may, Mr. Mayor, so this is the protocol that was adopted last September time in the previous review of the Constitution. The reason it's come back before members again today is to alter the position on political restriction to make it clear that these posts in the mayoral office, apart from the PA post, are to be politically restricted. In terms of how we got here, and as you're asking, Mr. Mayor, about practice, the way in which this was prepared was to go out and look at where they were available, protocols and practices within the other mayoral combined authorities, and in particular in terms of the Mayor of London. If I can put my hands up, Mr. Mayor, I can't remember what the specific point was, but I can reassure members that it was drafted with a view to adopting policy that already applied elsewhere, rather than seeking to give your mayoral staff any additional roles that wouldn't be seen in other mayoral combined authorities or in London. So apologies for not having quite the full answer, Mr. Mayor, but that's how we got to this point.
And if I can add, there's clearly there's a substantive difference between acting in that role of statutory mayor or statutory deputy and actually having being able to manage a busy diary and office by having representatives listening at meetings and responding at meetings that don't have that formal setting. That's clearly a facet of managing business in public life.
Indeed. Thank you. Councillor Count.
Yeah, on the first of those 2 points, I mean, I don't have a laptop provided by the combined authority. However, if I pop into Ely in the past and I've asked the secretary to check a diary input or to email something, that could be done. I've used office premises for meetings with the John Allsop, the Section 73 officer, and meetings before him. So I think it's all a question of degree. You know, I'd expect yourself and perhaps Austin to have a greater need for these facilities than others, but it's a catch-all. This is just a catch-all statement to make sure that we don't fall foul of anything, and so we can show to the public that we are behaving responsibility with resources that are deployed on their behalf. The second point been answered very adequately by Robert Parkin as normal behaviour. I feel like having that with this amendment, you know, and when we're moving on now, these are issues almost in the minutiae of the undergrowth. This substantial document is fit for purpose, and I'm getting to the point, Mayor, that I really think we should be moving to the vote on this, because I'm not hearing anything that is of any substance really here, but it's just minutiae of detail that should have been dealt with.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Count. Fortunately, you are the last speaker, so I'm happy, very happy to move to the vote on this as amended. I'm happy to move from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Count. So we will go through in order. Mr. Adams?
Yes, accepted.
Councillor Bailey?
For.
Councillor Bowden?
Agreed.
Councillor Count?
For.
Councillor Fuller?
For.
Councillor Herbert?
For.
Councillor Holditch? Councillor Smith?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just for the purposes of clarity, I'm taking that is also including that we are content to make a representation about the quoracy rules to Whitehall as well, which was within the recommendations as well from Audit and Governance. Yeah,
yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, thank you very much, members.
Okay, thank you, members. We move on to item 1.7, which is the business plan mid-year update. And I'm going to introduce Mr. Rains, although I can see Roberta smiling at me, so it looks like fortunately we have Roberta Fulton instead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, members. So the item 1.7 of the Combined Authority Board agenda is the business plan mid-year update, which is the 6-month routine review of the Combined Authority business plan. This reflects progress and change to the 2021 business plan that was agreed by the board in January of this year. Appendix 1 of the pack shows the report, provides an overview of the refresh and captures the main changes to mention. So as you can see on the bottom left hand side of the document, a new section has been incorporated on the COVID-19 pandemic and how the Combined Authority has reacted to support the growth and survival of the economy and local businesses. These initiatives are obviously not included in the original business plan and have therefore been reflected in the mid-year update instead. We are also proposing 2 new additions to the key project list, which the board monitors quarterly, and this can be seen from the top right-hand side of this overview. One of these is for the A141 bypass project, which follows on from the results of the A141 study, and we'll see the development of a strategic outline business case. And the second one just below it is for the Business Board Growth Service, which was focused on the Combined Authority providing businesses with advice and investment to attract them to the area and grow whilst here. The only final change I'll just mention quickly, if possible, is a rename to one of the existing key projects. So on the top section, the 7th project along, the Business Board Growth Investments project, was originally called the Business Board Tracking of a Local Industrial Strategy. But this has just been ever so slightly renamed just to better reflect the scope of the programme. So those are the major changes worth mentioning, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Councillor Herbert with his hand up very early. So Councillor Herbert.
So thank you, and I think it's a very clear way of sharing the information. In terms of the projects, I've got 2 angles really. One is that there are some of the biggest projects here which kind of merit further detail. So I first of all, as an example, would just like an update on the A47 dualling. Local authorities got a letter, I think on the 3rd of September, indicating what is the Highways England priority programme for the next 5 years. And it was very welcome that they did include the Guy Hearn roundabout, which has been discussed before, and also a small, I think 2.5 kilometre or 2.5 mile section near Peterborough. So I'd just like to get a bit more update on that as an example, because we've had an awful lot of transport studies, and where are we at? Does what Highways England say, and does their strategy, and the fact that there wasn't anywhere else in Cambridgeshire that was getting priority in the next 5 years in their programme, mean that a number of projects, including the A47, are not going to progress? Whilst I'm speaking, my other point is, you, me, and the leaders at the time signed up to a devolution deal with government. And I do think it would be right for us to put a report in public looking through that in detail, because there was a lot of projects, and they are important. They include projects that specific districts added, including East Cambs, Fenland, ourselves and others. And I would just ask that we bring forward a public report on the devolution deal, because there's several projects in that deal which don't actually feature in this list of 16. Thank you.
I think there's, if I'm right in saying, I think there's almost 100 projects in the devolution deal. And we certainly have got the work available there for us to deliver that update, and quite happy to bring it before the board, very, very happy indeed. But there was a specifically question on the A47. It was always my view that it would be a RIS3 project, and from 2025. We have done all the background work for it. Perhaps, Roberta, do you want me to bring you that in, or do you want me to bring Mr. Rains?
I believe Mr. Rains might be more inclined to provide a better update than me, if possible, but
that's fine. Mr. Rains, would you like to come in to the meeting?
Thank you, Mayor. I hope I've successfully joined now.
You have.
On the A47, we prepared the business case documentation and discussed that with Highways England, and actually had some very encouraging conversations earlier in the year. We went through what's called the ESCAR process. We're given a green rating. We had quite a high degree of confidence it was going to get into the RIS programme, so we were disappointed at that outcome. We have a meeting, in fact a meeting at the end of next week with Highways England to work out where we go next in this. We have made representations in the context of the spending review, and we are optimistic. We've got a very strong case. So perhaps this is something, Mayor, it may be appropriate when we've had those conversations with Highways England, when we've seen how the spending review, not spending review conversation in government goes over the next few weeks, to bring a report then back to the next meeting of the board on where that's got to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And of course, A47 is a project that we are still pushing very, very, very hard on. And we have a strong business case, as you say, and we feel that it is, we know, one of the top projects in ranked in the UK. However, we have just had the A14 done, and we're now having the A428 done, and it may well be that government are just spreading their resources around the country a bit more, but that does not mean we will stop pushing to deliver the A47. We absolutely will, and the business case is robust on it. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst we're on the subject of the A47, which I think is vital as part of the levelling up agenda, if nothing else, it is important, I think, that we start to get some formal feedback through letters or meeting minutes from Highways England or government ministers as to what is happening with the A47. So where we are at the moment is we have a lot of informal discussions that give us massive hope for the area, absolutely massive hope. And we go out and spread that good news, and then we discover that it's not happening. And I think we need to hold them to account and ask them to explain formally how they're going to deliver the dualling of the A47. I don't want to come to many more meetings and just hear that they've said this or they've said that and be left in this grey area. because I feel that, you know, we are entitled to this upgrade because the business plan says so. The government has said build, build, build. We're in a coronavirus recession, and this is one of the things that would help us get out of it. So I think we need to hold their feet to the fire, so to speak, and get a formal response as to how and when they're going to deliver this, so that we can give a timeline to our residents. So I'd appreciate that being a sort of formalised way coming back to us. The other point I wanted to make was in response to Councillor Herbert's comment. He may not have read the papers yet, but the devolution update is on the Leaders Strategy meeting. I believe from memory there's 77 projects with an update on all 77 which are going in front of us, and then we have to consider which is the best way to deal with that, to put that forward through the board, which you've already agreed to do, but whether it'll be every one of the 77 or some of them, there might be explanations why they are or aren't progressing, etc. So that is actually in hand and has actually been circulated to that. So I was surprised at the question on that. So thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I totally agree on the A47 points, and clarity and understanding through government is key on this, and we need a timeline that they will stick to. So I'll remove the recommendations from the chair. There are no more speakers. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bailey, and I can't see anybody saying or shouting out against this, so we will take that as unanimous and move on to item 1.8. And Roberta, it's you again.
Hello, perfect. Thank you very much, Chair. So as part of the agenda pack, 1.8 is the regular updated performance report, which provides an overview on delivery as at the end of August 2020. Appendix 1 supports this report and continues to be updated following the format of performance reporting, which was approved by this board at the Combined Authority meeting in November 2019. As you can see, the appendix provides detail on how the area is delivering against its key metrics, which are GVA, jobs and housing, and these are the top of the report. And in addition, the metric to this metric data, Appendix 1 also includes the RAG status of the Combined Authority's key projects. Again, this is what was updated at the end of August, as well as the overall movements of projects and the number of red projects across the entire portfolio. As you can see, there was a net upward of movement of 2 projects this month, with 6 projects improving in status and 4 decreasing. There are also now 2 red projects across the entire portfolio. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. So how relevant is this in relation to COVID? Because I mean, just a lot of this is really quite historic, isn't it? So is it meaningless now when we look at these 3 graphs in light of COVID? And when can we expect to get some reporting that's actually predicting what the reality is rather than what the reality was?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, so these obviously don't represent COVID at the moment. These haven't changed. These weren't updated since the last report. I believe the housing one was obviously put on hold because the housing figures are actually collected in person, and that has not been able to progress. We are hoping to have an update by the next meeting, but we will keep an eye on that and hope to be able to report back when we have more detail.
So may I come back? I mean, the one that, thank you very much, thanks, Mayor. So the one that concerns me most of all is about jobs, because we heard in the Mayor's announcements at the beginning that there'd been a significant increase in universal credit claims. We are aware, because it's been reported to us recently, that we're still seeing growth in some sectors, but we know that we have other sectors where the news is all bad. So I just foresee a greater and greater difference between what our ambitions are and actually what the baseline is here. So I know the Combined Authority with John T. Hill has been doing masses of work. So surely we have that information now already, and it would be really good if that was presented to the whole board as soon as possible.
I think that's very appropriate. And Mr. Adams, as obviously the chairman of the business board, is going to come in and have his say. So, Mr. Adams.
I think the point's very well made. Things are moving very quickly, and a snapshot in time going back will have changed quite dramatically in the last eight weeks or so. I think item 6.4 on the agenda, right at the back, that talks about the Evidence and Insight report, which has been commissioned recently, jointly by the Combined Authority and Business Board, as an attempt to fill in the answers to some of the questions you've just raised, albeit it's a little bit more up to date than the previous information. It does give some insight into the direction of travel of some of the key metrics, and helps us then understand where we need to redirect our effort to recover them over time. And that was the whole point of that report and why it's being presented today. We'll come back to that in more detail later on, I'm sure, but one of the other points that's made in that report is the need to provide more real-time reporting, and there is a commitment to try and work towards a dashboard such that we've got much more up-to-date dynamic information that can steer our investments and our interventions accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adams. I think, as I said, item 6.4 that Mr. Adams mentioned has been withdrawn from today simply because we wanted to take that piece of work through to the leader strategy meeting, which we felt was officers felt was very, very important. You should have all had an email to that effect today. Councillor Count.
Yeah, points well made about the impact of coronavirus on the current situation, and about the need for more up-to-date and day-to-day, almost real-time reporting. But I just want to draw attention to the fact that this is a 30-year devolution deal with government. And I, for one, do not want to turn around to government yet and say that I'm going to lower the aspirations for the area, not simply because I believe that the area can achieve this, but also because I believe that much of the country relies on areas such as Cambridgeshire, and there aren't many of us, that are positive contributors to the Treasury, and it's up to us to get everything out of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and for the residents of Peterborough, those jobs. So the focus should be, as Austin has talked about, the focus should be on about how we deal with the current crisis and how we get through that to keep us or get us back on track, and perhaps even exceed it over a period of time. So for me, I'm not ready to lower my expectations yet, but I am willing, alongside others, to put my heart and soul into developing policy, skills training, etc., to try and deal with it, with the current crisis and pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. And resting on our laurels is something we won't do. We know the investment into business across Cambridgeshire from the COVID grants, the capital grants through the Business Board, brought forward in the middle of lockdown, brought forward almost 240 new jobs and allowed businesses to grow and continue. And it's, as I said earlier, I'm visiting these businesses now. It's really exciting. And the impact that the right investment into business can have in Cambridgeshire is substantial. And I think that is being recognised by government through discussions that we've had, and it may well be that we can follow up that COVID response with a more concentrated response throughout the next course of the next year or so. We know that jobs are being created in Cambridge, and we also know jobs are going to be lost, and it's our job to try and generate more and more jobs and try and help business to do that. And I think that we are, as a combined authority, uniquely positioned to do that because we have the Business Board as part of the combined authority, because we are coterminous, and because because of that, we're able to act so quickly and deliver change and deliver opportunity. So valid points made. This is for noting, but it will be noted, I'm sure, and we will come back to it, of course. So we go on to part two, finance, and we have the budget monitoring report with Councillor Count. Would you like to introduce the report, or would you like to pass on to Mr. Alsop?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This report provides an updated financial position for the Combined Authority based on the 4-month period to the end of July 2020, and requests the Board to ratify a budget approval decision made previously. There have been 2 material increases to the Combined Authority's expected revenue grant income receivable in year. There was 486,000 awarded by the Department for Education for sector-based work academies and high-value courses, and 210,000 from MHCLG for peer-to-peer business support grants. Other changes to the forecast outturn position include a reduction in the expected revenue earned in year to reflect the fall in market interest rates on Treasury investments, and a reduction in the expected expenditure for the health and care sector work academy. This is in response to the low level of take-up of courses nationally. The programme timetable has been extended to the end of 2021-22, and the forecast outturn reflects the slippage in the programme. The capital programme reflects approvals made by the board in August, and also reflects the reduction in funds being passed through the combined authority to support the Cambridge City Housing Programme, and the impact on the £60 million affordable housing programme of delays caused by the COVID pandemic. In March 2018, the board approved a business case for the Digital Connectivity Infrastructure Programme. However, the medium-term financial plan was not updated to properly reflect this decision, showing the Digital Infrastructure Programme as subject to approval rather than approved. The board is therefore asked to confirm the approval so that the 2021 budget and the medium-term financial plan can be updated accordingly. I recommend the report to the board. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Count. Members? Well, Councillor Count, you put forward such a fantastic report. No, I can see Councillor Smith, she's got her real hand up, not a virtual one. So, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, my cursor got stuck on my other screen, as it constantly does. So I might have missed some stuff, but I've just got a couple of questions. So my understanding is that the skills team as such has been sort of disbanded. Should that have been reflected in the variances for this year? So that's my first question.
So if I may, Mayor, I think that will be one for John T. Hill and John Alsop to answer.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smith. In terms of the skills team, that hasn't happened yet. Obviously, there is the intention to create the growth company. That's in progression at the moment, but at the moment there is no changes that we are intending to make as a result of changes in this financial year. But obviously we're currently looking at developing the budget for next year and the medium-term financial plan. That will come back to the board as part of the process. So we'll be bringing changes which will impact on next year and future years to the board over the next few months.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. Richenda, Mr. Hill has indicated to come into the meeting. Will it be possible to admit him? He's waving frantically on the attendees list.
Yeah, we'll do that, Mayor. Yeah, he's just joining us now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hill.
Good afternoon. Yes, the skills team has most definitely not been disbanded. We are still with exactly the same cost structure. All that's happened is that one member of the team has been made redundant, and their role has been replaced, in fact, with a higher level role, which is a more expensive role. And that person will be joining us in November. And in fact, the AEB, there was a role in AEB that was made redundant as well, and replaced again with a higher level role of a senior responsible officer for AEB, and that person will be joining us in November as well. So the teams are all there and they're all running, and I hope they're not going to go anywhere.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. Good. Well, I'm very pleased to hear that. So this is probably one, Mr. Hill, as well for you as well. So in Appendix 1 under grant income, it references the LEP core funding, which is £500,000. Could I have a bit of explanation about how that's spent, and also in relation to the LEP capacity funding of 149,000, what that's spent on, and the 144,000 on committee and business board allowances for the business board allowances. What is that all spent on as well? 144,000. So the LEP core funding, the LEP capacity funding, and the committee and business board allowances funding.
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
So LEP core funding, and I can't give you all the details, but we will pass those to you as a subsequent part of the meeting. It is basically funding that is distributed across salaries. So it is core funding. It is for salaries of people. And the capacity funding, that is different. That was in fact an original £200,000 that was given to us, and indeed all the LEPs, after the LEP review that made a number of criticisms of LEPs, what all LEPs were given £200,000 to make the sort of changes they needed to do in how they did what they did. And that has been a budget that we have used for the last 2 years since my arrival in individual projects to strengthen what we do and how we do it. And we can provide after this meeting a list of those individual projects that have been over the last 2 years. That they will be things like writing SOBCs for particular items that are important to the local industrial strategy. They will also be writing strategies. The LIS was part funded from capacity funding, or part of its implementation. The third item you mentioned is actually the remuneration and expenses for the business board members.
Okay, may I come back? So that 144,000, which you've just referenced, is that a recurring sum, an annual sum?
Yes, that is an annual allowance for the costs of the remuneration and the various expense claims of the business board.
Okay, and is our expectation that we'll spend all that?
Yes, it's calculated on the remuneration levels that we've attributed to each of them, plus a pretty small amount for things like petrol.
Okay, and if I may have one more question there, please.
Of course you may.
Thank you. So, in relation to the capital programme, obviously, COVID is impacting capital projects, and it's difficult for us to judge to what extent. Is it realistic that we are going to be spending to our projections from the capital budget?
Yes, it absolutely is. We've selected the sorts of projects through our evaluation process that are not affected by COVID, and where projects are affected by COVID in terms of their deliverability, then we've pulled that money back and we've redeployed it in projects that can move to successful fruition. So yes, we are very confident in the amount of projects we've got on our books at the moment, that we will spend all of the 147 million by the 31st of March.
Super. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And also, let's not forget that when the business board was absorbed, or the LEP was absorbed into the combined authority, we managed to make structural savings to the budget, entirety budget, of £1.4 million per annum by putting those two organisations together. And of course, the benefits into the wider community are being seen across the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. There are no further speakers. Councillor Camp, do you have a seconder for your recommendation?
We shall look round the room.
Councillor Bowden is first up. So, Councillor Bowden, I don't believe there is any conjecture, unless there is somebody frantically wave at me. So we will therefore take that as a unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So we move on to part 3, combined authority matters, and we go to item 3.1, which is Cambridgeshire Autonomous Metro Special Purpose Vehicle Shareholder Agreement. And we will now move. Move to Councillor Dupre, who I hope is still around and still awake after a long gap between her last question. But Councillor Dupre, you have another question from the Overview and Scrutiny.
Good morning, board members. Yes, I am here and I am awake. The Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee would wish to place on record its concerns about the transparency of the CAM Special Purpose Vehicle and about the lack of timely access to information regarding the CAM scheme in general. Will the Combined Authority give the committee the assurance that members of the committee will be provided with information and access to officers in a timely manner, and that the special purpose vehicle will operate openly and transparently? This would include the provision of exempt information to members of the committee on a need-to-know basis.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dupre. And the setting up of the CAM SPV has been open and transparent. There have been 2 successive public reports to this board asking to set the company up, and we are today asking to recruit the highly distinguished and eminent Lord Mayor, CBE. Scrutiny have a wide range of powers which would allow them to actively engage with the SPV. We would encourage them to consider the powers they already have and make some positive recommendations to the board about how to engage with the company in a constructive way. That will help us deliver the very best transport system for Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. I would encourage the Monitoring Officer to work with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to develop their proposals in a positive way of working. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will take up that offer with the Monitoring Officer to ensure that the committee's existing powers are actually able to be used and are respected by the board and by the Combined Authority as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dupre. Mr. Parkin, you've got a busy day today. Would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and good afternoon, members. On the last point for Councillor Dupre, we're in the process of updating the forward plan with some entries to show where further updates on SPV matters will come before the Transport and Infrastructure Committee and back to board. And I look forward to discussing with Councillor Dupre the other points just made. Today is one, as I say, of numerous updates that will come to the board on the CAM SPV and the work that officers and colleagues are putting in to fully establish it and get it going and operating. We're providing to you recommendations on entering into the shareholder and SPV agreement on the basis of heads of terms that you're being provided to today. We're seeking your approval on the appointment of Lord Robert Mayor, CBE, as chair of the SPV, together with an annual sum in remuneration of £80,000. We're also seeking authority to enter into a service level agreement. That's a document that'll essentially provide the basis upon which we support the SPV in its early phases to operate on a practical basis, and there is a request to approve further drawdown of funds. We have with us Kim and John, and also John Alsop, who can take questions if they arise on specific elements of this report. I'll take members through if I can. So the incorporation of the SPV has occurred. It has the name One Cam Limited, and the interim directors have been appointed. That's the first step in establishing an operational company. We're going to capitalise the company through the subscription agreement on the sums already approved, and that'll take place following this board. The shareholder and SPV agreement is set out to you in its heads of terms, and thank you to Councillor Smith for pointing some typographical errors, which will certainly be noted when it comes to finalising that document after this meeting. The document is a tool by which the combined authority and the SPV understand the relationship between each other, and essentially provides the combined authority with strategic control over all of the SPV, but also the opportunity to review and monitor its performance and activities. And it's very much part of that transparency piece, whilst respecting the need for autonomy in the proper sense of an SPV to deliver its work. The SLA, as I've mentioned, is a service level agreement that's seeking to provide some of those essential basic services to the SPV in its early phases to ensure that it can run effectively. Recruitment, as you'll see, we are proposing Lord Robert Mayor CBE as the preferred candidate. That follows an interview panel, and Lord Mayor's CV is appended to the report, and apologies that wasn't with the original parcel of information. We've made sure that's been circulated after that, and that should be with members now. Remuneration is recommended at £80,000 on an annual basis, and that's comparable to analogous roles of chair in this sector. And we consider it a good value for money and a competitive rate for the sort of skills and profile that the SPV would be receiving there. Non-executive director recruitment, similar recruitment exercise is underway. The chair is going to be crucial to that, so there's an obvious sequence that the chair be appointed and then be involved in the process of the appointment of the non-executive directors. Remuneration, that will be set based on experience and expertise, and that will be the level of remuneration for the board will be recommended at the time that the appointment is sought to be confirmed. The officer recruitment into the SPV, the leadership, the recruitment is going to take place for the Chief Executive, Director of Strategy and Sponsorship, and an Executive Assistant. On the Chief Executive appointments, the global search firm Redgrave is progressing discussions with capable candidates and looking and through an open advertisement in the Times Online. There are 6 standout candidates with more applications still coming in. That was at the time of publication of this report. We may have an update on that for you from John Hill. Director of Strategy and Sponsorship, again, Redgrave are leading that with early discussions or with potential candidates, as is common, as is the approach, the normal approach in the market to stimulate interest. Again, though, there's a public advertisement, both on the Combined Authority website and also the Times Online. And the Executive Assistant, that will be clearly a crucial role in delivering the work. That will be recruited in due course. There is the report sets out an update on CAM delivery strategy development, and that's set out in full for you there. There was a diagnostic review with some key findings there set out at 6.2. I won't read them all out for you. And we have as well the treatment of budget, and that's set out and is described. We have John Alsop on the call today who can expand on those for the purposes of clarification. So point 7 talks about the procurement process, which is going to take place for what's called a conceptual design. And whilst this, for the purposes of clarity and looking back at the report, I don't feel it's as clear as possibly it could be on this point. But I just want to make clear that this is an update. This part, we're going to be coming back to the board through TNI to seek authority to appoint following the procurement process that is going to take place. So that will come to you in November, and there'll be a full update on that procurement process, and we'll seek your authorization to make an appointment at that stage. That's the report in review for your members. I'm happy to try to answer any questions. John is available, and also John Alsop, who will be able to no doubt assist on any specific questions in relation to the budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hockin. And we have Councillor Herbert with his hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. A couple of questions. And in the background, I won't relitigate my broader views, but I will be abstaining on this. So I'm basically going to pages 128 and 129 for a couple of questions, and then a question about the conceptual design. So in terms of recruiting the executive directors, Mr. Parkin, I just appreciate knowing who the current executive directors are of OneCam, who are part of that process, along with the proposed chair and the mayor. That's question one. Question two, it's opaque to say the least what the appointment process is of the senior, these two senior staff, the chief executive and the director of strategy. Will the board be left to make those decisions, and what's the timetable on those? And then probably more substantial is just the just an understanding on process. I'm not asking you to test your transport and tunnelling expertise, Mr. Parkin, but in terms of the process, it's proposed to procure a conceptual design. How does that fit with the outline business case timetable, where there was a commitment that work would start in February next year and be completed by December 2021? I just appreciate an answer to those. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parkin.
I'll certainly try to assist. I may rely on Kim and John to fill in on some of these points. As to the roles of the within the company, those officer roles, the chief executive and executive appointees, well, it's just been formed. So whilst we have and we're required to put in place directors at the point of formation, they very much are interim directors, and they're officers of the combined authority. That will be replaced. There's no, as it were, there's no sort of contracts of employment at the moment within the company. So those roles are to be created and will initialise following these recruitment processes. Mr. Hill may be able to assist on your questions around the approach to the chief executive recruitments. If I could invite him to answer that now, if he's available.
Yeah, for you, Mayor. As Robert said, we've been through a worldwide search, actually, and we have now confirmed 8 suitable candidates to be considered for the long list to bring forward to you as the short list. And as Robert says, they're from a variety of national and international backgrounds and expertise, and it's been very successful. In terms of Councillor Herbert's question, we will be bringing forward proposals in relation to, as set out in 5.10, the interview panel and the interview timetable, and obviously developing the work around the various questions and assessment panel for those posts. So we are very much in the final stages of identifying those candidates, and we're now very much into the assessment panel. And I hope when members will be in a position of seeing those candidates, they will see that we've been able to attract significant interest from the very highest level in that particular industry. Thank you, Chairman.
Mayor, it would just help if I probed Mr. Hill a little bit more, because 5.10 says agreeing the interview panel. I mean, I presume, Mr. Hill, that you've got a good idea about who you think should be on the panel? Who would be on the panel to appoint these 2 senior staff?
Well, obviously, as it's set out in 5.10, we're yet to agree the interview panel. Quite obviously, Chairman, I would like to involve, once you've appointed Lord Mayor today, to involve Lord Mayor in the discussions on that as well. And I hope that he will be able to play a role. So I think that's very important. I think in terms of myself and the role of my fellow chief executive, I think that's as it was for the previous chief executive at the long listing stage. And we certainly won't be, of course, playing a formal role in terms of the final process. But what I will do after today and the appointment of Lord Mayor is come back to the board informally very quickly in relation to the interview panel, because we do want the individuals to be able to be appointed as soon as possible, and that will depend on us taking the appropriate action within the appropriate timetable.
Thank you. I had that third question, Mayor, on the linkage between the conceptual design and the what for me is a really important element, which is taking time, and that's the completion of the outline business case.
Mayor, I can assist with the first part of that. So I think hopefully the report is clear on the objectives of the conceptual design process. They're set out by way of principles at 7.3. So it's clearly a very important step in understanding the art of the possible and filling in with a sense of what innovation may come forward into design, construction and operation. And as small b indicates, that's going to feed into that the business case. And I'll pass over, if I can, Kim, to you, if you're able to talk a little bit more about the linkage there. Is that okay?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. As we know, there has been considerable work going on around the timetabling of the new OBC since we and the CAM Partnership Board put forward the proposal for the concept vehicle. Officers have been putting a considerable amount of time into the development of the procurement process to enable us to bring forward the best possible vehicle based upon the report from the Technology Advisory Group. And I think we were all agreed that that could be a bit of a game changer in terms of the CAM, because it enables us to be at the forefront of technology developments. And as well as that, it provides us with a much more affordable scheme, and it has that potential. Through our work that we have been doing, we have started the design process now, and that is getting underway. We've had an initial discussion with the market which showed considerable interest in local bidders and wider bidding into this procurement process to produce a new design vehicle. In our view, and we will bring further details of this, as Robert has said, into the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, and we have promised also to bring matters regularly back to the board so that you're aware of how we're progressing this. But we are intending to bring back a report to the board on the development of the procurement process, with the intention that it will not impact the development of the OBC, and that actually the two are timed quite nicely, so that the development of the design concept concludes at the time of the OBC starting, so that we have we can feed seamlessly from one into the other. So it shouldn't impact, but as I say, the greater detail will come back in future meetings of this board. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I had some difficulty following that, actually. It'd be quite nice if we could perhaps have something sent to us in writing to show actually what the timeline is, because I found that difficult. Just one simple question. So whilst not suggesting in any way that Lord Mayor won't be fabulous at the job, I am interested to know how many days a month he's expecting to work for £80,000 a year.
Can I bring in Ms. Sawyer for that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We estimate at this stage that it will be in the region of 1.5 days per week for that amount. We had several discussions with Lord Mayor about this, and that equates to about 35 days a year.
Thank you.
Councillor Count.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to open by saying how incredibly impressed I was by the CV of Lord Mayor, and I believe that he will, should this go ahead, as this goes ahead, there'll be a true asset to this project, and welcome him to chairing the SPV. I want to draw some attention to the pages 173 and 174, not so much for what they contain, but as to the way forward. And that will help when we get questions, some of the questions that we've heard help today. Because whilst this matrix identifies what will be a combined authority responsibility and an SPV responsibility, for me, the next step would then be to develop a risk matrix based on that, and that will help us with some of the questions being raised. So if I give you an example, Councillor Herbert was asking who would be on the employment panel for those senior appointments, and a risk might be developed, such as how do we appoint so that it has the credibility with the Combined Authority Board, whereas this is a SPV responsibility. So there might be a mitigation, for example, to have some member of the board on that panel. Alternatively, there might be a secondary risk that says, how do we prevent over-politicisation of the SPV, preventing it through appointments to getting to its core values? And it might say that we avoid interference in that way. And it's by having a proper risk matrix that asks these questions in advance and then throws up the mitigations that we get to the right answer. So I see that as a good way being taken forward. And I think that would also help with the outline business case, because the outline business case, one of the risks will be, what about the delivery on time, on schedule, on budget? And some of the mitigations might be to develop some of the arms that are easier and more readily accessible in advance of the main core city tunnel section. But for that to happen, we need to identify that a rubber-wheeled tarmac solution is necessary, which I believe it is, and therefore you could run non-conceptual vehicles on it, although it might be over-specified in terms of the width of the tarmac for a period of time. So I just think that that'd be a useful suggestion. I'm not asking for that to come back to the board at this stage or putting forward a recommendation. I'm asking for officers to consider that as a way forward, and I will leave that for the executive to consider. Thank you for your time, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Count. I have no further speakers, and I will be moving the recommendations from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? For the 3, 4, I've got Councillor Holditch, I think, was first. I will now ask each voting member of the board whether they're content to approve item 3.1, and I will take the items as a whole. Mr. Adams?
Yes, content.
Councillor Bailey? Councillor Bowden? Councillor Count? Councillor Fuller? Councillor Herbert?
Abstain.
Councillor Holditch? Can't hear you. You look like you're frozen, Councillor Holditch. I'll come back to you in a second. Councillor Smith?
Abstain.
Okay. Well, Councillor Holditch is frozen unless it comes to me now.
No, I'm back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's, I appreciate members for voting in favour of that. I think that it's a very exciting time for Cam Metro. The getting on board somebody with Lord Mayor's incredible experience and the incredible understanding of not just the engineering challenges of this, but clearly of also the city of Cambridge and the surrounding area as well, is more than significant. And I think that it shows the gravitas of the project that we have been able to attract somebody of his incredible standing. And I think, of course, there's some conjecture about special purpose vehicles and why you would bring them forward. But if I use a very small example of Peterborough University, the reason that we've been able to deliver the university to us from a standstill to construction in around 3.5 years is because we got the Arup team, the MACE team on board with significant experience of how to build and how to work a university, and that gave us acceleration in the project. And I think that this SPV will do exactly the same for Cam Metro. It's having the best people who've done it before, know what they're talking about. And as I've said before, this is a piece of international level infrastructure that we will be delivering across Cambridgeshire, and I think it's extraordinarily exciting for the county. We will also be looking in February to update the routes that we are planning to build beyond the south of Cambridgeshire. I think it's important that I liaise closely with members in Huntingdonshire and in Fenland and in Peterborough to plan exactly where those routes should go. So we move on to item 3.2. Councillor Dupre is back in the room. Councillor Dupre has a question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And the floor is yours, Councillor Dupre.
Good morning again, board members. The committee has asked the following question. If the Department of Transport funding decision on dualling is negative, will the whole 2 million for the outline business case still be required? And in that situation, would the combined authority proceed with a junctions only option, and in what timescale? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dupre. I think it's clear there's an election coming with that question. It would be inappropriate to predetermine the outcome of the Department of Transport decision. The Combined Authority Board will consider the way forward following that decision and the appropriate share of funding to enable the delivery of either junctions only, dualling or hybrid of the two. Timescales will become clear following this decision. And although we haven't had a formal public consultation, we clearly had a very, very successful and very, very well attended virtual consultation, and it was extremely positive in favour of dualling of the route. And we know from work that's been done within the area that it's highly, highly, highly desired by the majority of the electorate. Mr. Potter, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members. A10 dualling and junctions. The purpose of the report is to update on progress since the last report to board in August, to request approval to draw down the capital budget for the next stage within the medium-term financial plan, to request approval to progress the scheme under delegated authority as and when we have the DfT's decision on major roads network and local large majors future funding. So the recommendations to the board are sought as A, note progress since the August board report, B, approve the release of the capital budget of £2 million allocated as subject to approval currently within the MTFP, and C, delegate authority to the Director of Delivery and Strategy in consultation with the Chair of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee to develop and procure the outline business case stage suppliers following a major route network, MRN, local large majors, LLM funding decision by Department of Transport. As already stated, this board is very well aware of the importance of this corridor and the efforts to date to bring business cases forward for consideration by the Department of Transport as well as this board. So the strategic outline business case, as previously reported, is complete, and the outcomes of the virtual public exhibition, as just stated by Mayor Palmer, which was extremely well attended, that information has all gone off to the Department of Transport and is being considered as additional information to the major roads network and local large major applications for funding work on junctions and dualling, which was made in July 2019. The public exhibition presented 7 options, and these options will be considered dependent on the outcomes of the DfT decision in the outline business case stage going forwards, and this will include formal public consultation, which, depending on the COVID restrictions at the time, may well include physical representation as well as virtual. Well, that will have to be considered appropriately at that juncture. The Combined Authority, as previously stated, has submitted 2 funding bids in July 2019 to the Department of Transport under the Major Roads Network Fund, which was for the junctions only improvement package, and the local large majors, which was for the dualling work. It was announced in the spring budget that funding was approved for the next stage of the junctions work, but following the outcome of the strategic outline business case, this is being considered as additional information to both the junctions and the dualling work, and obviously we are pushing quite hard for a decision to do both, and we are already engaged with the DfT in discussions. So next steps, well, they're ongoing. We've received some questions back which we've responded to. The engagement is ongoing, and we look forward to hearing a response from the DfT officers in due course. The purpose of this paper is to enable us to maintain programme pace, and therefore the request is that the £2 million that is currently in subject to approval in the MTFP is approved for drawdown. so that when the DFT decision on funding is given, delegate and therefore the approval of delegated authority is sought for the Director of Delivery and Strategy in consultation with the Chair of Transport and Infrastructure Committee to commit the budget to a programme of work that takes into account any future DFT funding commitment. These approvals would enable officers to commence procurement of the supplies required to develop the OBC stage without needing to revert to the board. This would allow the combined authority to maintain pace of programme as previously stated. The alternative would be to take a decision on funding at the November board meeting, potentially losing some weeks in the development of that procurement and appointment. However, the board will be updated on the outcomes of the DFT decision and subsequent programme and funding as appropriate. An outline business case for a scheme of this potential magnitude is a significant undertaking, and as previously stated in relation to having expertise to deliver such a case, because we've got junctions at just under 50 million and obviously dualling at some hundreds of millions of pounds. It is proposed that the combined authority procure via Cambridgeshire County Council an employer's agent team with the necessary resources and expertise to be able to manage the technical designer developing the elements of the OBC. This agent would project manage the OBC on the combined authority's behalf and be responsible for cost control, programme milestones and risk. Contract management of the employer's agent under this arrangement would be carried out by the County Council. The project will be led by a project board set up in line with the combined authority's project management standards. Project governance will be compliant with the assurance framework and the combined authority's project management guidance. The technical designer would then subsequently be engaged and expected to develop a business case to a standard appropriate to the scale and complexity of this type of scheme. The business case would need to align with the standards similarly sought within a Highways England strategic road network project control framework governance. Monitoring and evaluation criteria will be set within the scope of the project, and a third-party review organisation would be engaged to evaluate the OBC at the next project gateway. This is in accordance with DFT requirements for schemes with an estimated cost in excess of £50 million and in line with the Infrastructure and Projects Authority guidance on panel assessments. Project arrangements set out above are subject to any variation that may be needed to comply with DFT funding conditions. There are significant implications here, and there will continue to be interfaces with other key transport infrastructure projects under development, including the current A14 works, Milton Road Roundabout Working Group, which is in place and ongoing, the CAM, obviously on that route, and the Greenway cycling and walking proposals. There are also obviously other well-known interfaces with the North East Cambridge proposed developments, the Waterbeach Newtown, the proposed relocation of the Anglian Water Treatment Works and the proposed relocation of the Cambridgeshire Police Headquarters. The development of this scheme will continue to align with the SPEAR report, the Combined Authorities Growth Ambition Statements, the Local Transport Plan, the Local Industrial Strategy, local cycling and walking policies, government policy on cycling and walking provision as detailed in the recent gear change document, and will take into account the recommendations of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Climate Change Commission and emerging evidence on economic trends, including post-COVID travel data. The development of options will also take into account public feedback and feedback from member councils received to date, equally taking note of the comments raised at the beginning of this meeting by Councillor Bailey. Financial implications, the strategic outline business case delivered within its budget. The funding sought today for the outline business case is within the MTFS budget provision. The OBC stage is intended to be jointly funded with the DFT and combined authority contributions. The total budget envelope will be confirmed following DFT review of the SOBC. The combined authority contribution will be a proportion of the overall OBC cost. This will be funded from the £1 million in 2020-21 and £1 million in 21-22, included within the combined authority budget report and MTFP, should the board agree to that. And I commend this report to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Potter, for a thorough presentation. I have two speakers, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. Just 2 points of clarification, please. The report says that the DfT decision is expected imminently, but kind of reading between the lines of what we've just heard, I suspect imminent is no longer what we are really expecting. So do we have any realistic idea about whether we're going to get a decision this side of Christmas? And then just going back to your point, Mayor, about the consultation. So as I recall, we had a very good report on this, even though there was sort of overwhelming support for something to be done, I don't recall any one of the 7 options getting significantly, so kind of statistically significantly more support than any other. So I think we need to be careful about saying that the overwhelming support is for dualling, because I think the overwhelming support is for some sort of intervention that deals with the issues. And I think there's more work needs to be done to refine that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Herbert.
Yeah, I also endorse the thanks to Mr. Potter for a very clear presentation. This project obviously hangs completely on the DfT's decision and the application that was put in July. Can I try and prise a bit more out of Mr. Potter in terms of the timing of that, and what's then the arrangements for spending this additional money and any other money that's allocated? Am I understanding, Mr. Potter, you're saying that the 2 million, none of the 2 million will be spent until there's been a positive decision by DfT?
Would you like me to respond?
Yes, please.
To both. Thank you. If I come back to Councillor Smith's comments first of all, in terms of a decision, we're engaged and liaising with the Department for Major Roads Network and Local Large Majors within the Department of Transport. We have responded with some high-level questions that they raised, and we are looking forward to any further subsequent responses that may be made in relation to that. In terms of when a decision could be made, obviously I can't predetermine the department's decision and dates, but there was a commitment made in the budget to progress the junctions, and what we are doing with this strategic outline business case is actually trying to say to them, well, can we actually bring the two things together, the junctions and the dualling, and consideration for both. So we're optimistic of some funding, and we're obviously trying to get more funding. And the engagement is positive to date. So I look forward to an early decision rather than a later decision, which is why we're asking for the approval of the funds that we may require from our own pot early in that sense. In terms
so,
of
Mr. Potter, does that mean that none of the 2 million will be spent until that decision?
I was just about to come back to that, Councillor Herbert.
Sorry.
I was just going to respond to Councillor Smith's second question, if I may, and then I'll come back to your questions. In terms of the consultation, I think within the report we mentioned that there was strong public support for an intervention, and although there was some favouritism for a full dualling route, we equally point out in here that it didn't significantly favour one route over another. And I've previously stated at the August board that we won't predetermine the outcome of any of the options. They need to go through a development phase within the outline business case that considers all of the input from people's individuals and communities so far, and elected representatives, and also the development of those stages of those options to get into a shortlist for the formal consultation. If I may then go on to Councillor Herbert's question of the use of funding. It is proposed to wait for a Department for Transport decision to understand from the Department for Transport's support viewpoint in central government funding what it is that we're looking to develop forwards in terms of options within the outline business case. I think it would be imprudent of me to start engaging a supply chain in a procurement process, although I could do so, to develop something that isn't yet necessarily determined. So I think we would therefore not propose to use the current funding until such time as we've got confirmation from the department. And it goes back to the question raised by Councillor Dupre in terms of a similar question around funding and around decisions. And it would be imprudent of me to predetermine what the DFT may come back with.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this report forward and moving this project forward. It is desperately needed. The people of East Cambridgeshire cannot, tolerate the current situation. We've been waiting for a very long time and pushing very hard for improvements to this important road on the strategic network that, has huge amounts of traffic that are nothing to do with our local area. And therefore needs significant improvement. I think it's fair to say, Councillor Smith, that the only option in the exhibition feedback that had more agreement than disagreement was the dualling option, but yes, it wasn't overwhelming support. However, I know from East Cambridgeshire, and I'm here to represent my residents, that we do have overwhelming support, and it is overwhelming, and we did a huge amount of work in the run-up to the May 2019 elections in East Cambridgeshire to understand the view of our residents on this subject, and I have absolutely every confidence that there is very, very significant support for dualling the A10. I think it's well known that the Liberal Democrats don't support that, however, I have to tell them that I think they are at significant odds with the local population in East Cambridgeshire for sure. And I think it's known. Well, I can see Councillor Smith shaking her head vigorously, but I think it's the stated direction of the mayoral candidate. But anyway. Moving on to more important matters, which is actually getting improvements to our road. We do definitely need to progress this. The ongoing impact to other roads in the area is just completely unacceptable. The 142, the 1123, the 1049, the 1102 are all suffering horrendously. And it's important that we get traffic back onto the strategic network where it should be. So I do want to move this forward. It was in our devolution deal, and we do need to keep pushing hard. And I think the idea of bringing the two elements together is important. We don't want to do abortive work, so it's clearly important to understand the longer term plan for the road. And I do just want to thank officers for the recognition in the documentation about future proofing in terms of, I always talk about camifying any upgraded A10. I think it's really important. We are critically understanding of our climate change responsibilities. We do want to get people off the road network. That is absolutely the overriding goal, and that's why the mayor has been pushing for the CAM for such a very long time. For me, we've got the north portal of the CAM at Waterbeach, and it would be complete madness to think about spending multi-millions of pounds on the A10 without obviously considering whether and how it can be CAM-proofed so that we can use it for an extended CAM in the future. And I will keep saying it at every opportunity, and I thank officers for recognising that in the paperwork and now thinking that way. And also, as ever, we think from East Cambs it's important to have a completely separated off-road, separate cycle route from Cambridge to Ely. And also, clearly, we're waiting for, and the sooner the better, in terms of my residents, some sort of solution to crossing the A10 in the area of the BP roundabout. Thank you. Sorry to bore everyone on the same subjects as before.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I have no further speakers, so I will be recommending from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder? I thought you'd put your hand up, Councillor Bailey, if I waited long enough. So we'll go through one by one. Mr. Adams?
Yes, support.
Councillor Bailey? Yeah. Councillor Bowden?
Agreed.
Councillor Count?
4.
Councillor Fuller.
4.
Councillor Herbert.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Okay, thank you. That is carried unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, it is currently 1:10 I'm going to propose a comfort break for 10 minutes. We have been on air as it's such for over 2.5 hours, and I propose that we rejoin the meeting at 21 minutes past 1. Screens before we continue. Councillor Herbert, you still have your hand up from the last discussion. If you want to keep it there and be first in next time. Thank you.
I'll try and assist, and also I'm afraid I have to apologise that I need to leave in 25 minutes. I've got a work commitment this afternoon. Apologies.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry it's such a long agenda today to everybody. Okay. Perhaps if Councillors Holditch, Fuller and Count were able to turn on their monitors, we will be able to continue. Councillors Fuller, Count, can you hear me?
Sorry, James. In my haste, I just spilled my tea, so I was just mopping that up before I turn the camera back on.
Easily done. Easily done. Councillor Count must have spilled his tea as well. I can only assume. Well, I think we will begin. I thought it was important, obviously, that many members impossible to turn on, but we have got time scale too. So we will now turn to item 3.3, the approval of the first tranche of recommended projects for the Market Towns Programme Investment Prospectus. This report contains 4 appendices which are exempt from publication under paragraph 3 of Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, in that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding the information, including the authority holding the information. If any members of the board wish to discuss the information contained in those appendices, we will need to consider whether to go into private session. Does any member want to discuss the exempt appendices? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication. So in that case, we will defer consideration of the report to the last. We'll continue, and we have a question on this report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Chairman, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. And before I ask this question, I would like to remind the board that all of the questions from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee are derived by consensus among members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, whose political balance is 50% of the same political persuasion as the Mayor. The Market Towns Programme Investment Prospectus, then, it appears that there is nothing in the proposals which affects Chatteris. Is this a timing issue? And if so, when is it envisaged that funding applications for Chatteris will be considered? Have there been any project proposals that, when independently appraised, did not reach the pass mark? And if so, what were these proposals? Can the project be economically justified in the current climate? What is the process for developing these applications? Who is involved? And how can residents and local organisations be involved and contribute to the development of proposals?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dupre. So it is correct that the consideration of funding issues in relation to Chatteris is a timing issue. Fenton District Council plans to submit proposals to Chatteris for consideration at the Combined Authority Board meeting in November. To date, the Combined Authority has received 4 proposals, all of which have been independently appraised against the programme assessment criteria and are recommended for approval by the board today. The assessment process ensures that proposals viably deliver against priorities identified within the master plans in consideration of the current climate and the need for market towns to play a proactive role in our response to COVID-19 economic recovery. Market town master plans were consulted upon as part of their production to ensure local residents and organisations were able to contribute to their development. This is reflected within the agreed sets of priorities and interventions. District authorities have been asked to lead on and continue working with local stakeholders in the development of the proposals. Thank you. And could I ask Domenico Carrillo, Business Space Manager, could you introduce the report, please, Domenico?
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, Board. The purpose of this paper is to seek Board approval for the first 4 project proposals received under the Combined Authority Market Towns Programme. These have been received from Huntingdonshire and Fenland. The 4 project proposals, as stated earlier, have all been independently assessed and appraised, and a summary of the appraisal has been included as Appendix 1 for board members to view. In terms of a brief description of the 4 proposals being put forward to the board today, we have 2 bids coming from Huntington. The first one is asking for 300,000 capitalised funding to progress additional feasibility and development work. This is vital to develop business cases and investment cases to accelerate delivery of their master plans. Additionally, they're asking for 42,400 capitalised funding to install footfall cameras in St Ives. These are required to better monitor pedestrian flows and visitor numbers, but also to introduce a benchmark as a baseline for future interventions coming forward. Fenland have also submitted 2 project proposals for consideration today. The first one is to install and better manage flood signage in the town of Whittlesea. This is required really to kind of better manage traffic flows when the town is closed due to what is regular flooding in the area, and the signs will help to keep the town operating and open longer. The final one is to make marketplace improvements to Wisbeach, and these will improve and introduce new facilities around the trading and community areas in the town. And they are seeking 200k funding for that. In terms of remaining proposals, the CPCA continues to work with our local authority leads. Subsequent bids are being developed and will be brought before the Combined Authority Board in November and January. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time and happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm interested to hear some detail about how grassroots communities were involved in developing the master plans for both of these projects, please.
Mr. Carrillo, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smith. So in the production and development of these plans, town teams were established to make sure that local consultation and engagement was undertaken, and that gave an opportunity for those grassroots organisations and stakeholders to feed into the process. I will add that for Huntingdonshire, that process was quite extensive, and there were quite a few stakeholders brought round for each town as part of that town team process.
So if that one was extensive, well, I mean, were they both extensive?
Absolutely, sorry, Councillor. Yes, and also for Fenland.
Okay. So that, okay. Could I just have a bit of detail, please, about how it was done? Because you said before that there was local consultation and engagement. What sort of activities took place, please, to really, make sure that the people who are going to be the beneficiaries really had their voices heard in this?
so the town teams brought together, there was regular meetings and workshops held with local stakeholders. That fed in, as explained earlier, that fed into the production of these master plans and reflected within the list of priorities and interventions that each respective plan puts forward. What we're talking about now is to provide that funding to mobilise these plans into delivery and implementation. So the consultation has been reflected within those priorities that are set out of those plans, and the local authority leads are encouraged to continue that dialogue with local partners to ensure that the proposals they're putting forward are still fit for purpose in delivering against the master plans, but also to reflect any changing economic situations as a result of post-COVID recovery.
May I just come back one more time, please, Mayor?
Yes, of course you may.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so I'm pleased to hear that you've done robust initial consultation, but I think it's important, and I'm sure you've got this planned, to go back to people with these master plans just to do that sort of final sense check on them, to make sure that people's input has been correctly interpreted, and so what is being planned for them really is what they want. So consultation isn't a one-off process; it's a continuous process. And the more effort that's put into it, the better the outcomes are for everybody. So I'm interested to know what ongoing consultation there's going to be and what flexibility there is in these plans for them to adapt if we got it a bit wrong.
Thank you.
I think if I may come back, I think Dominique has given quite robust answers, but the reality is that these master plans are being led by district councils with association with the combined authority. They're very much designed to be bottom up. With that in mind, councillors Fuller, Bowden and Bailey are meeting myself very shortly to discuss next steps. I mean, this is an unprecedented amount of investment into the market towns of Cambridgeshire. And it has absolutely been driven exceptionally through the district councils, and their level of input has been very, very high. And clearly they have engaged properly with local stakeholders as well. The opportunities that this will bring forward, I think, are fabulous. Councillor Fuller, you are next.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it might just help if I commented on this from a Huntingdonshire perspective, probably just to reassure Councillor Smith that yes, there were extensive stakeholder consultations taking place throughout this, and as Domenico said, there were town teams that we set up in each of our areas of those stakeholder organisations and groupings to help go through the workshops and develop many of the proposals in the master plans. There wasn't full public consultation in the traditional sense, purely because that wasn't practical at the time to do that. And our approach to this has very much been, this is stage one of the process, and now as we move those individual projects through into delivery, which you'll see as the basis of Huntingdonshire's bid, or one of them before us today, when we've got proper costed proposals and business cases behind them, that's at the stage at which we can go back out to consult then more widely with all those affected stakeholders and the general population and the residents. So there's no attempt to sort of avoid scrutiny here or engagement. It's just coming in at the right time and at the right levels. And clearly we had to get these plans in place. We had to start getting some ideas down on paper and get something together. And had we spent too much time at the very beginning of the process in publicly consulting on every single one of those proposals, we probably wouldn't be where we are now with this, and where we're already starting to see some delivery of that. Clearly things have changed a little bit. We were rather unfortunate in Huntingdonshire in that our master plans went through approval in February, and then obviously the pandemic struck. So there will need to be a reflection in that next stage of the process of how we can now deliver things quicker to help address the COVID problems. And that's certainly what we will be doing. So I hope that reassures Councillor Smith, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fuller. That's really helpful.
Okay, thank you. So we have no further speakers, and I'm moving the recommendations from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bowden. So I assume, unless Councillor Smith waves at me, that everybody's happy to see this go through All in favour unanimously, and I'm delighted to say that is the case. So we now move to part 4 of the meeting, and we now move to CAM outline business case, the non-statutory consultation central tunnel section summary, which is a bit of a mouthful. And Graham Netton.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, board members. The purpose of this item is to present the findings of the initial non-statutory outline business case consultation that was undertaken earlier this year on the city tunnel section, central tunnel section. A summary report has been prepared on the findings of the consultation, and that was submitted to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee on the 9th of September, where the findings were endorsed unanimously. So hopefully the committee has had a chance to review the summary report. And the recommendation of this item is for the Combined Authority Board to note the findings of the summary report. I'll commend that to the board for consideration, please.
Thank you very much. Members? Well, there are no indications to speak. Kim, would you like to do some introductions on the report?
Thank you, Mayor. I think given the rather lengthy time this meeting has taken, I think there's nothing more to say other than the fantastic response we had on the report was great. You know, up as high as 84% in support of what we were doing in relation to the CAM. Really, you know, strong indication and support across the whole board, really, which is very promising going forward. I think other than that, unless the members have got questions which Graham can answer, then I think we really have said everything we need to, and I think it's very encouraging. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, absolutely. And there are no questions. And as I said, the numbers of people that took part and the massive numbers in favour and support of this scheme, I think are significant and should be a nod to how far we drive this scheme forward. So we'd ask for notes, so we duly note, and we move on to the response to England's Economic Heartlands Transport Strategy consultation. This is Paul and Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, board members. So this paper is following the paper that went to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. It's around the England Economic Heartland Transport Strategy, their proposal for the subnational transport body, and also to provide a bit of an update regarding the proposed connectivity study that they proposed between Peterborough, Northampton and Oxford. The England Economic Heartland is a partnership between local transport authorities and LEPs and covers the CAM arc from Swindon in the west to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough in the east. The authority is an associate member of the EEH, and their strategy aims to enable the transport system to support sustainable economic recovery and growth whilst reaching net zero emissions for 2050. In addition, as I outlined, the EEH are consulting on becoming a subnational transport board, and the consultation runs until Tuesday, the 6th of October, and this paper forms the basis of the authority's response. The strategy has 5 priorities: to decarbonise the transport system, invest in digital infrastructure, East-West Rail, investment in active travel, and freight and logistics needs to be met. In general, the strategy aligns to our growth ambition statement, the LTP and the business plan. For example, it recognises East-West Rail, CAM, Felixstowe and Eastern Corridor, our key strategic corridors, and our position regarding the net carbon, zero net carbon. Also, we have recognised that, and I think the EEH recognised that the strategy will need to be reviewed in light of the new normal, whatever emerges following COVID, and that's part of our statement. In addition, the connectivity study, EEH have put forward a programme of studies to work with partners to identify proposals that will eventually go into the investment pipeline, and one of these is the corridor of Peterborough, Northampton and Oxford corridor, to come up with an integrated transport package of measures. At the moment, that's at the scoping stage, and so officers are liaising with EEH on its brief and ensuring that it includes integration with the A47. Finally, the Subnational Transport Board proposal, as outlined in the paper, there'll be three functions to subnational transport body: to prepare transport strategy, to provide advice to the Secretary of State about exercise of transport functions, and to coordinate the carrying out of the transport functions. Once established, the DFT would use E8 to prioritise funding applications and they could potentially vary Highways England's investment plans. The proposals for powers to run concurrently with the authority, and that's the County Council and City Council. It's not clear how bus powers on the subnational body would align to the work being undertaken on the bus reform and CAM. And in addition, highways authorities for the area in the past have not been overly enthusiastic about the development of concurrent powers to carry out highways work. Finally, the potential for Cambridge and Peterborough to be bookended due to its position between England Economic Heartland and the Transport East body in the east, to the east of us, and to a lesser extent Midlands Connect. Following discussion at the Transport Infrastructure Committee, it concluded that England Economic Heartland needed to clarify its form and geography before it can really consult on the subnational transport body. For example, should England Economic Heartland look at its geography further to the east because of the movement between Felixstowe Port and Suffolk, Norfolk and Essex. So that's the summary of the report and some of the findings and statements from the Transport Infrastructure Committee. So I commend this paper to the committee. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any comments, members? No, well, I think thorough going over, Tim, and appreciate that. I'm moving a recommendation from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Account. And as there were no comments, I assume everybody's in favour of this going forward, so we will move on unanimous. Item 4.3 is bus reform, and Councillor Dupre is back. And could you share the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's question, please?
Thank you. As with our question for item 3.1, will the Combined Authority give an assurance of transparency to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as this programme continues? The committee has a task and finish group which provided a series of recommendations last year and is committed to reporting back to the committee at the end of this municipal year.
Okay, thank you. So the bus reform project is being run in line with the published programme plan, and its activities and progress updates are transparently reported. The project reports formally to the Mayoral Bus Reform Task Force 6 times a year. All the City and District Councils nominate a member of the Mayoral Bus Reform Task Force. Other stakeholders are included in the meetings, and the minutes of these meetings are published. There was widespread public consultation event reaching over 5,000 residents late last year to inform of the project's work. Officers have attended both meetings of the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee's Task and Finish Group, to which they've been invited, and made presentations at each, which were circulated. The last of these meetings was in February of 2020, and officers would be delighted to attend any further meetings of Overview and Scrutiny Committee's Task and Finish Group, which the committee wishes to schedule. So we're open to you, Councillor Dupre. Invite the officers along, and you can hear and see everything that's going on. Okay. Yeah. Roland, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. Bus reform. The purpose of this report is 1.1. The bus reform project identifies ways to deliver improved bus services within the authority's area. The COVID-19 crisis has had a very significant impact on the bus market, and on the 9th September 2020, the Transport and Infrastructure Committee approved proposals to amend the Bus Reform Task Force programme milestones to reflect the pace of recovery of the bus market. The Combined Authorities Board's approval is now sought for the remaining 1.2 million budget provisions set out in the medium-term financial plan, to be used to fund short-term innovation trials to inform subsequent reform proposals. These proposals were discussed at the Transport and Infrastructure Committee on the 9th September 2020, where they were endorsed unanimously by those present. The report to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee can be viewed via the link within this report. The recommendations sought from the board therefore are a single one: A, approve the remaining 1.2 million budget provision set out in the medium-term financial plan to be used to fund short-term innovation trials to inform subsequent reform proposals, and to delegate the detailed allocation of their budget, the trials, to the Director of Delivery and Strategy in consultation with the Chair of the Committee, subject to reporting the detail back to future Transport and Infrastructure Committee meetings. I am happy to go through elements of the report that went to the committee, or equally take questions from the board members here in the interest of time.
Okay, any questions for Roland, please? Well, there are none, but I think you mentioned this earlier, Roland. We set out with a plan and ambition through the bus reform task group to do one thing, and clearly COVID-19 has put a bomb through that, and we're left with a very different situation. You and I, we know that we are in conversation with government to make sure that we are in a strong position to invest in our bus service to bring forward future change, and that work is ongoing. So I appreciate the work, the significant amount of work being done by the officers of the Combined Authority on this, in liaison and consultation, of course, with those officers at the County Council who are still involved. And of course, we will continue to do whatever we can to improve the bus service, given the perilous state that it is currently in. So I'm moving from the chair, and do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bailey, and as nobody has indicated to speak, then we will take that as a unanimous decision. So thank you, Mr. Potter. We go to agenda item 5.1, and this is recommendations made by the Skills Committee in the Sector-Based Work Academy and High Value Courses report. We have a final question from Councillor Dupre from Overview and Scrutiny.
Thank you. How can it be ensured that there will be no duplication of work, with that being undertaken by the Greater Cambridge Partnership on these measures? With that in mind, will the board commit to ensuring the most productive use of collaboration between the Combined Authority, the GCP, Cambridgeshire County and Peterborough City Councils and District Councils? And can the Combined Authority update the committee on the environment of resources to COVID-19 and its effectiveness?
Yeah, thank you. So the Combined Authority and the Greater Cambridge Partnership are actively working together to ensure there will be no duplication of work between the two organisations. In regard to the commissioning and delivering of the two programmes described by items 5.1 and item 5.2, all business support and skills interventions, both organisations consult each other on their plans for the development and commissioning of new interventions. For instance, GCP officers have been involved in the development of proposals for business growth service over the last 12 months, and with colleagues in South Cambridgeshire District Council and Cambridge City on developing an implementation plan for the business growth service. This can be found as a sub-economy delivery plan for Greater Cambridge within Appendix 3 of the full business case. All 6 constituent councils have been involved in the development of local implementation plans. Further adaptations of the business growth service are included in the full business case. To adapt to it, to adapt it for COVID recovery, we've also been developed in partnership with the GCP and other colleagues from each of the 6 constituent councils within the COVID economic recovery subgroup. The GCP have also been proactive in consultation and partnership to develop complementary interventions between the GCP and the Combined Authority around the business growth services. Officers from the Combined Authority are currently offering comments and suggestions on the GCP plans for skills and employment interventions to address the anticipated impact of COVID-19. This involves a potential contract for skills support in Greater Cambridge that would complement that provided by the Combined Authority skill brokerage. This would provide a complementary and coordinated set of services from the Combined Authority and the GCP to deliver exceptionally high standards of skill support in Greater Cambridge. This partnering activity and consultation between Combined Authority and GCP and all the 6 constituent councils demonstrates both the Combined Authority Board and Business Board's commitment to ensuring the most productive use of collaboration between the Combined Authority, the GCP, Cambridgeshire County and Peterborough City Councils and the District Councils. The Combined Authority is using 6 million of its available resources, has delivered the following support to businesses in response to the impact of COVID-19. The COVID-19 Capital Grant Scheme, 5.5 million approved by the Business Board from the Local Growth Fund, awarded to 132 companies and forecasted to create and safeguard 809 jobs. The Micro Business Capital Grant Scheme, £500,000 approved by the Combined Authority Board from Gainshare, awarded to 128 companies and forecasted to create or safeguard 278 jobs. Environment of 2.5 million was made from the Small Capital Growth Grant Scheme to the COVID-19 Capital Grant Scheme, as it was unlikely this funding would have been claimed for growth projects. The remaining 3 million was a new allocation from Local Growth Fund award. The Micro Grant Scheme funding was previously unallocated capital gain share. And as I said, I've been privileged to go and meet some of these companies and see in action the amazing difference that the money has made, and the creative people who've spoken to people who've actually got new jobs in the middle of lockdown because of this money that's gone through. So I think the question, Councillor Bray, is extraordinarily valid, and I hope that you're satisfied by the answer.
Thank you. I will feed that back to the committee.
Thank you. Laura Guyman, Apprenticeship Levy Advisor. Would you briefly introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Board. I'd like to present to you agenda item 5.1, sector-based work academies and high-value courses. You'll have seen from the information presented to you that approval is sought for the Skills Committee to be given delegated authority to spend the £486,297 for sector-based work academies and high-value courses, along with the approval of the creation of the academies and the high-value courses via a procurement process with local providers. The Combined Authority Board is recommended to allocate the £486,297 when received from the Department of Education into the devolved adult education budget. The spend of the funding is broken down as £241,361 over the 2021 and 21-22 financial year for sector-based work academies, and £244,936 to offer enhanced high-value courses which target 18 and 19-year-olds who have left school, not entering higher education and are unable to enter the labour market due to the impacts of the pandemic. The additional funding is in response to support young people affected by the pandemic, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. And it's open to members. And again, the presentation is so thorough and exceptional, there are no questions to be asked. Oh, Councillor Holditch. You're muted, Councillor Holditch, which is that's better.
Some people say that's the best condition for me to be in. But can I just say, value this report? I have to say, I'd like to put on record the work that this committee is doing, because it really is a good committee. They invite the right questions, and they've done the homework before they come. It's really good stuff. And also, there was a question earlier about the staff of the Skills Committee. We have restructured the department, which gives us just more saving, but also enable us to report and recruit staff that are more in depth of the needs for now and in the future. I'd just like to say that.
Thank you, John. I think
members are happy to approve it. We're very great.
Thank you, John. I think we got the gist of what you were saying there. Unfortunately, your connection is extraordinarily poor. I suggest a phone call to City Fibre might be necessary. But I think it was. I think if you probably heard, it was very congratulatory to Laura and the team for the work they've been doing and the exceptional delivery. And I, you know, I think that should be echoed, and I would like to echo that. I think the work that the team has done with John T. Hill and the COVID response and the ability for us to get funding directly to business and the skills agenda, I think is credit to you and exceptional work. So thank you. And John is proposing, do we have a seconder, please? Austin Adams is
Can I suggest that the combined authority put...
Unfortunately, John, we just can't hear you very well. Great shame, unfortunately, but we have got a proposal and we have got a seconder. And as nobody else has put their hand up to speak, I'll take that as the unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. And we move on to item 5.2, which is the Business Growth Service. I have received notice from Councillor Herbert that he wants to move an amendment to the officer. Obviously, Councillor Herbert is no longer here. Does anybody else wish to put Councillor Herbert's amendment?
I'm prepared to put it, but I mean, if nobody's going to second it, then it's rather pointless, isn't it? I just wonder whether it could be posted in front of us for information's sake.
Richard, could we see the amendment, please? Okay, so members, I know that you have all seen this amendment, which effectively breaks down the service into 3 separate hubs. The point that Councillor Smith has made, is anybody willing to second the amendment by Councillor Herbert? I'm not seeing anybody put their hands up for that. So if we could remove the amendment, please, Rishenda.
Mr. Adams has his hand up. I don't know whether you just...
No, I think that's the legacy hand from earlier. Is that right, Austin?
Sorry, it's not, but I was going to speak.
Apologies.
I was going to speak against all the reasons why not to adopt this amendment, but since it's not supported, then I'll stay quiet.
Okay. So as there's nobody to support the amendment, we will go to Mr. Hill. Sorry, I'm pausing here. My apologies, John. Mr. Hill, to introduce the piece.
Thank you, Mayor. So the item in front of you is to approve the final business case for the Business Growth Service. I'll do a very quick and concise presentation. Members will remember from the local industrial strategy that there were 5 key parts to the industrial strategy that we were, as the business board, tasked with implementing. That was a growth coaching service, a skills brokering service to connect talent with courses, with skills development and with new jobs, an inward investment service to bring new companies to our area. And they would be supported as three services by a set of grants, an innovation grant to help smart companies with really good ideas get R&D funding to develop them and grow their revenues, a relocation grant to help companies relocate here, and a capital growth grant and capital growth equity for the companies that we support with growth coaching to help fund their growth in terms of equipment and potentially premises and working capital to fuel growth. The business growth service is fundamentally those 5 services, with the growth coaching service creating 3,498 jobs as forecast, the inward investment service creating 1,328 jobs, and the skills brokerage putting 3,500 people into skills development, including 1,600 new apprenticeships. The capital growth grants are expected to produce 1,500 jobs as well. Together, this group of measures and packaged as the business growth service will produce something like 1/3 of all the new growth in jobs that the business board interventions as a whole will produce over the next 6 years. So it really is a key part of the business board strategy. The CA board's approval of the outline business case was subject to a number of conditions that were set out, including confirmation of the EU funding, appointment of the delivery partner, of course, submission of cash flows for 3 years, access to new HMRC data on how to target high growth firms, proof that we are partnering with local authorities in the implementation and the customization and tailoring of this service to each district and sub-economy. Things like sustainability and environmental policies, evidence that our growth in jobs claims were viable through evidence from central government and on similar schemes. And we've also imposed upon ourselves 2 further conditions. One is to show that we've adapted from the OBC this scheme to take account of COVID and through the local economic recovery strategy, which we have, and also to sense check that the impacts of COVID on the enterprise zone revenues don't severely impact or significantly impact the funding for this service. Finally, I would just make a point about management of the service. The growth company that we have created will be effectively managing this service, and the chairman who we are currently, or chairperson who we are currently recruiting, will come to the skills committee every other meeting, so every 4 months, to report on performance against objectives, and will also report to the business board every other meeting, so every 4 months. That chair will also report to the combined authority board once every 6 months, so twice a year, to account for themselves as chair of the growth company on the objectives delivered against the spend made. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Members? No comments at all? Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. So can I just ask for, John, please, a bit of information about the recruitment process that's been going through for the chair, please?
Yes, absolutely. We have a recruitment organisation contracted to advertise. We're in the very early stages of advertising at the moment, and we have had two applicants to that advertisement, one from within our economy and one so far from outside our economy, and we are hoping to receive at least half a dozen applicants for that role. It has been advertised in both local and national websites and journals.
Okay, and national press, including national press?
No, not including national press, just national websites, but not for instance Times, national jobs websites like Indeed, for instance.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? So I assume, Mr. Adams, you'd like to propose this, and I'm very happy to second. All those in favour? Well, I suppose it was Councillor Smith as well. So the question really was for Councillor Smith as a question. But if you're happy to vote for it, then we were unanimous, which is rather wonderful. And we move on to item 6.1, which is Local Growth Fund Programme Management. And again, John.
And this is, in fact, Steve Clark.
Oh, Steve.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, Mayor and Board. So this is the usual report that comes from the Business Board to the Combined Authority Board, providing the updates on the progress of Local Growth Fund. The report shows progress to the 14th of August on the following items. The Getting Building Fund update and lessons learned. We ran a very quick review on lessons learned for the process that happened over the summer when there was a call for shovel-ready projects. It was a very quick sort of review of what happened. It's obviously proposes a number of ideas and things for development, which we as the Local Growth Fund team are looking to build in. This is areas of increased pipeline development, working through our local authority partners and engaging of private sector, maybe using technology a bit further. And this will also feed into the review of our processes that we're conducting, which is noted later on in this report. The 2021 LGF annual grant payment, we're still outstanding to be paid the final third. We have reviews in October and January with government, and we are submitting projects each time. They're looking to see what's under contract and will release funds accordingly to the Combined Authority to deliver those. Financial update, we have allocated, we have 1.1 million left to allocate after the last board rounds, and we have paid out spend of 89,229,000 as of 14th of August. Quarterly return to MHCLG was done, and we have 16 live projects in delivery and 7 in a pre-contract situation. Since the 14th of August, 3 of those have actually been contracted. This paper also contains a change request from Photocentric, which is one of our LGF project awardees. They've actually changed, they wish to change the site and size and scale of what they wanted to do with their grant. It makes no impact on lesser outputs or outcomes. In fact, they want a bigger building and to enjoy even bigger growth. So we ask the board here to approve that change request for that project. The COVID Business Capital Grant Scheme continues to pay out on the 5.5 million that we awarded earlier in the summer. The Eastern Agritech Initiative pipeline is stronger after the change to intervention rate last board cycle, and we have 11 projects which are in various states of appraisal and a very much stronger pipeline of interest now. 1.1 million left to allocate in that fund. The LGF monitoring and evaluation, monthly monitoring by officers continues and is reported in is in this report as an appendix to show actual jobs now being collected from projects that are delivering. And we've also got a contractor, Metro Dynamics, and their partner Exogen are conducting deep dive evaluations on all the historic completed projects. This will be reported to the next board. The Audit and Governance Annual Internal Audit was conducted 2019-2020, conducted earlier this year. That's now reporting that after all the 9 recommendations have been delivered, the proposed position is moved to substantial. And finally, we're running, as noted before, a review of all the current LGF processes, scoring matrices and evaluation. The Deputy Business Board Chair, Andy Neely, is leading on this review with officers currently.
Thank you very much, Steve, for again a thorough presentation. Any comments, please? No. So, Austin, do you have a seconder? Councillor Smith, you're there. Yes.
Sorry, it's feeling a bit like a one-woman show here. Just two questions. So I'm really pleased to hear that Professor Andy Neely is doing that work. Will there be any detail of that reported back to the board, to our board, or is that all retained within the business board? And in reference to the final payment of a third, is there any risk at all of that money not being forthcoming?
Okay, yeah. So the review work will definitely come back to the boards. It will come back as part of this management review update. So you'll see that. And the final third, we're working very hard to make sure that we have every penny under contract. No one could say there is no risk, of course, because something could drop out at the very last second. But from our point of view, we understand that once you reach January, that it's unlikely that they'll have to make the final payment, and it's hard for them to get it back beyond that point.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, so we have Austin as proposed. I'm prepared to second from the chair. All those in favour? Everybody happy? Good. Then we move on to item 6.2, the Growth Deal project proposal, September 2020. Can I remind members that when the Combined Authority Board takes decisions as an accountable body, it's committed to acting in line with our assurance framework in the interests of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area as a whole, and taking decisions based on the recommendations of the Business Board. This report contains 4 appendices which are exempt from publication under paragraph 3, Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, in that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and if any members of the board wish to discuss the information contained in those appendices, we will need to consider whether to go into private session. Does any member want to discuss the exempt appendices? No. So, Steve, it's all yours again.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So we have 2 projects here that the Business Board considered on the 15th of September. These were projects which were brought forward as a result of suggested actions from the COVID-19 Cambridgeshire and Peterborough City Centre Exit Strategy Group in July. The 2 projects were asked to come forward with projects to support capital investment in the short term to support city centre businesses, visitor economy, and aid the cities to reopen and revive. The first project that the Business Board considered was the Peterborough Builds Back. This was a project request of a grant of 800,000 with a this is to create adaptations in the city centre across the market square, and to provide covers and equipment, capital equipment. The Peterborough City Council would be running the project, providing additional 180,000 funding. It would create 100 jobs over the longer term, or protect and create 100 jobs, and include apprenticeships as well. This project scored well in the process, and was well backed through the Entrepreneurs Assessment Panel. This project was ranked 1 in the table in the report in terms of the scoring. The second project was the Cambridge Market Square redevelopment. This project was asking for a grant funding of 700,000, but no other match towards it, with a view that it would obtain construction funding after this process so that works could begin. This was to obviously make improvements to the Market Square, make the Market Square operational night and day, and be able to run far more activities, thus creating obviously a pull on using the city centre and growth for those businesses. Again, there were 180 jobs proposed in the project because it's a project of scale, but actually our appraisers prorated down that actually it was probably realistically 34 jobs if the full construction didn't go ahead. There was a high degree of risk within this project in that we would have been funding the early stage design, REBA 1, and if the further funding was not brought forward, then this project would end up being a revenue funded project in reality, and would not actually have we would obviously be looking to claw that back, and it would be tricky. So of the two projects, the business board recommended that the Peterborough project ranked 1 was approved for funding, and the project 2, the Cambridge City Market project, was recommended for decline, but with an invitation offered in the considerations that they may wish to revise their bid and come back.
Thanks, Steve. Austin.
Yeah, sorry, I think this is very straightforward and hopefully it's clear to everyone, but just one minor point. We did talk previously about creating a template just to capture the essence of these projects, so it was more digestible for this board rather than Steve having to explain them verbatim as he's just done so. Can we try and go back to that position, please? I think it would make for an easier, speedier meeting.
Yeah.
We can always redact anything in the template that's sensitive.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add, Austin and Mayor, the accountable body reports are attached as exempt Appendix C. So yes, perhaps unnecessarily, I could have just referred to those, I suspect.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Austin. Councillor Bailey.
Very tiny thing, and I totally support the recommendations in the paper. But at 1.2, it talks about the fact that the proposals were discussed at the business board meeting on the 15th of September, where they were endorsed unanimously by those present, which is a bit misleading when it goes on then to agree the first one and disagree the second one. So just need a bit more careful wording, I think. It's just a bit, I sort of get what it's trying to say, but it's not quite accurate, really. Small thing, but good luck to Peterborough. Sounds like good project.
Yeah, and Peterborough took this, grasped it with both hands, and really went for it. They're really putting forward some exciting stuff. Cambridge's bid was exciting, but it was going to take years, quite frankly, and this money was put forward through the business board to try and create some kind of COVID response and COVID support for city centres, in the same way we discussed that some of the money for the market towns is similar. So we're still in discussions with Cambridge. You know, the reality is there's thick end of £800,000 there that is available to Cambridge City Centre to invest in, to whatever necessary to try and help business grow and survive and kick on in this time. So we don't want to lose that opportunity. We've been working with the town city centres teams through the Combined Authority now for the whole of COVID virtually, and we had one of our meetings this week, and Cambridge is still looking at options of what it can bring to us for some short-term solutions. So I will say to the people of Cambridge, should any one of them be tuning in still, the offer is still on the table. We want to work with you. So Austin, do we have a seconder for proposals? Councillor Bailey's doing her hair, but I'll take her anyway. And all those in favour, I haven't heard anybody speak against, so we will take that through. Thank you very much. And we move on to item 6.3, which is COVID-19 Economic Recovery Strategy Report. John.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is very much the first draft of our local economic recovery strategy. It's timing as an initial strategy draft for the committee, the skills committee and the business board, and then through here to the CA board, ready to hit the ground running for the end of furlough with interventions that can be mobilised rapidly actually does confer some significant limitations on this first draft. Whilst it's benefited from 2 to 3 months of anecdotal input from local authority economic development officers and business representatives, it suffered from only 2 to 3 days of exposure to the accurate and robust evidence base, which has taken time to complete. So we propose to bring a second draft of this report back in November that is tied back more rigorously to the evidence base. However, in the meantime, this does provide us with what we need now, a blueprint for a portfolio of interventions that can be mobilised rapidly in October for the end of furlough. It's been co-created by the 7 local authorities, plus of course GCP and the 7 largest key business organisations locally, and it's been workshopped by a subgroup of the business board as well. It has a very ambitious and optimistic vision to lead the nation out of recession by accelerating the recovery, rebound and renewal of our economy and achieving our ambition of doubling GVA in a more digitally enabled, greener and healthier and inclusive way than before. 30 of the 36 interventions are funded, practical and implementable immediately. They focus on resources we have to hand and deal with the recovery between October and spring next year. Of the 6 unfunded interventions, 2 are being pursued through the CPCA and Oxcam investment prospectus. 1 is a subject of separate lobbying with the M9, that's around post-16 vocational education, and 3 are relatively early stage concepts. More locally and into our sub-economies and districts, we recognise that the current strategy is a whole of economy strategy, and we'll be working with each of the city and district councils to create variants that are tailored to their own towns, cities and districts. Thank you very much.
Apologies, I forgot I was muted. Councillor Bowden.
And thank you to John T. Hill for a very good report. I'm particularly pleased to hear about the work which will be taking place with the districts and the cities in order to make this strategy fit for purpose for the individual locations that we deal with. It is massively important that we make what difference we can in promoting local economic recovery. And I have to say, I think it's important that we don't overpromise what we can do in the short term, because in the short term, most depends upon what will happen to the national economy. But to the extent that we can locally make a difference, some of those differences can and should be massively important. And I'll therefore be supporting this proposed first draft. I do have a concern, however, which I'd like to mention. It's particularly to do with paragraph 2.2, that is Appendix B, the interventions which were explained and which are listed in the Business Board report. And as John T. Hill said, there are 36 different interventions which are mentioned. And I just worry that in an attempt to be comprehensive, we may be slightly misguided in that running so many different initiatives, we're in danger of losing focus on maximising the contribution that we can make to local economic recovery within our limited resources. And that limitation of resources is both in terms of money and particularly in terms of officer time and manpower. There is a lack of facility in this draft at the moment for feeding back the cost effectiveness of these 36 different initiatives into our strategy. And that means we mightn't prioritise appropriately and therefore mightn't make the greatest possible positive difference. I do appreciate this is a living document and it's just a first draft, but my request is that future iterations have slightly less of a scattergun approach as far as interventions are concerned and are rather more systemic and have a sense of prioritisation and focus and show some degree of cost benefit and evaluation of each of the interventions which is mentioned. I'm concerned 36 interventions is an awful lot to prioritise all 36 equally, and I'm not convinced all 36 interventions have equal value. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Smith.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm very pleased to hear this is going to come round a second time. I took it to my cabinet, and my lead officer fed back the comments from my cabinet, but we were informed that it was up to me to bring these comments to the board. I think we need to look at that as a process, actually, because it means you're going to have to sit here and listen to me going through these items. So at South Cambs, my cabinet felt that the green recovery didn't come through strongly or clearly enough, even though there is reference to it in the sort of vision statement bit. Being green to our cause really central to what we're doing, and given everybody's 2050 target, we feel that this needs to be amplified and pulled out more strongly. Including interventions and funding impact clarity. The interventions on specific support initiatives available for rural villages and economies was also felt to be lacking. Overall, we felt that the document was very city or town centric and actually very little detail on village related strategies, and that's obviously key to me. Interventions for young people in particular, we also picked up as being too hidden within the overall strategy, not least given the continued emerging strategic focus required for helping the 16 to 24 age cohort, alongside the re and upskilling more generally for all ages. And it talks about garden cities, which are not a priority for South Cambs, though my members recognise that they are on the agenda for others. There were some specific points as well, but I'm sure you'd rather that I re-emailed these in rather than read through them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Mr. Adams. Austin, I'm afraid we can't hear you.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Very quickly then, thanks to Councillor Smith for that feedback. I'm concerned that it's thought that this meeting is the vehicle to provide that feedback. And maybe we need to take that offline, because that's not what we're here to do. Nevertheless, the feedback's appreciated. Equally, the sentiment of the points made by Councillor Bowden with regard to the extent of the interventions, I think, with the benefit of the work that's just been done with Metro Dynamics to get a real sounding of where we are in terms of where impact is most needed, will certainly help to inform the prioritisation of the various initiatives. We should be pleased that we're blessed with so many different levers that we can pull that we've identified, I think. And I think that the important next step in the next iteration is to help to deal with that prioritisation on the basis of the evidence that's in front of us. And it's a bit of a moving feast. It's very dynamic. Things are changing all of the time. And I think that's an important element of driving agility into our decision making and readjusting those priorities over time. The overall point I would like to make here, though, is let's not let perfection get in the way of progress here. We could debate and have multiple iterations of this for weeks and months to come. It is never going to be perfect, and we're dealing with a series of variables which are uncontrollable and changing rapidly. It is better that we accept compromises along the way and just flat out agree with the sentiment and the direction of travel, and let's get on with some of these things and make them happen. Otherwise, we'll leave it too late to have the impact that's so desperately required.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. The clarity of a business mind, I think, sometimes very welcome in political circles, and I couldn't agree more. There are no other speakers, so you are proposing as Chair of the Business Board, Mr. Adams. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bailey. I'm going to ask if all those are in favour. If there isn't, then please wave at me. No, we're in for Councillor Smith. Are you happy to back? You are. Okay, thank you. So again, a unanimous vote, but also a clear indication, Mr. Hill, of where we think this could go. So thank you very much indeed. You'll be disappointed to find out that there is only one item left on the agenda, which is item Sorry, there are no items left on the agenda. We are at the end, and thank you all for your significant intervention over a very long period today, and appreciate it very much. And more so, the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough will be appreciative because money has been put into the economy again through this Combined Authority Board. We have a reserve meeting of 28th of October, which we will not require. So the next meeting of the Combined Authority Board will be on the 25th of November, and the arrangements will be confirmed nearer the time. And I declare this meeting closed.